When my mother told me there was no seat for me on Christmas Eve, I nodded, picked up my coat, and let myself out through the kitchen door. I did not raise my voice. I did not ask her to explain. I drove 20 minutes back across the river to a rented studio apartment with one chair in it, and at 1:17 in the morning I called my bank and canceled a transfer I had been making every month for 6 years, $2,340, the 15th of every month, 72 months in a row. It took 4 minutes to stop. 3 days later I had 41 missed calls, and not one of them asked how I was. Here is what I did not know that night. Standing in my mother's kitchen counting name cards that did not have my name on them. I thought I had been thrown out of one dinner. I thought the worst thing in my family was a woman who could say a cruel sentence in the same voice she used to ask if you wanted more potatoes. I was wrong about the order of things. My mother was the smallest of the three. Behind her was my sister, who spent the whole month of January being kinder to me than she had been in 10 years, and who had a very specific reason for it that had nothing to do with love. And behind my sister was the person I would have sworn on my life had never hurt anyone, the one who taught me to drive, the one who sat in the passenger seat the day I took my road test and told me to breathe. He had been lying to me for 8 years, and he did it with my own name. By the following summer, there was a sign in the front yard of the house I had been paying for, and I was the one my family called selfish. I did not argue with that either. My name is Danielle Kovac. I am 30 years old. I am a travel intensive care nurse, which means for 6 years I lived out of a suitcase in 19 cities and took every holiday shift so somebody else could go home. I have held the hands of 11 strangers while they died. I have never once had a seat at my own family's table on Christmas Eve. This is the story of the 6 weeks that ended one version of my life, and the 6 months after that gave me a different one. Before we go on, do me a favor. Subscribe to the channel, and then tell me one thing in the comments. Have you ever had to stop paying for someone in your own family? And what did they call you afterward? I read every one of them. Now, let me take you back to the 22nd of December, and a 9-hour drive I made because I thought I was going to surprise my mother. The contract in Charlotte ended on the 19th of December, and the manager offered me another 13 weeks before I had even taken my badge off. I said no. I had never said no before. 19 contracts in 6 years, and every single time I had signed the extension in the parking lot before I drove away, because the extension meant no gap, and no gap meant the 15th of the month took care of itself. That was how I thought about my own life by then. Not in seasons, in the 15th of the month. But I was 30 years old, and I had not been home for Christmas since I was 24. I loaded the car on the 22nd. It took 11 minutes. That is not an exaggeration, and it is not a brag. It is just what happens to a person who has moved 19 times. 2 duffel bags, a laundry basket of shoes, a coffee maker with the carafe wrapped in a towel, and a plastic bin of scrubs. Everything I owned fit in a Honda with 190,000 miles on it, and there was still room in the back seat for a wrapped box. The box was for my mother, a wool throw blanket, deep green, the kind she used to touch in stores and then put back. I had wrapped it in the hotel room in Charlotte the night before with tape I bought at a gas station. 9 hours up through the Carolinas and Virginia and West Virginia and into Ohio. I know that road. I could drive it with the radio off. And that day I did, because I wanted to think about how I was going to walk in. I had it planned like a shift change. Get in around 8 on the 22nd. Sleep in my old room. Be there on the 23rd when the house started filling up with cookie sheets and cousins. And then on Christmas Eve I would just be there. Already in the chair, already part of it. No announcement, no gratitude, nobody making a speech about how Danny finally made it home. Just present, the way everybody else got to be present without earning it. I had called my mother on the 14th, not to tell her, just to hear her. She talked fast that day. I remember noticing it and filing it under nothing. She told me about the church cookie exchange, and about a woman named Cheryl who had gotten a new car, and about the gutters. She talked for 11 minutes and she did not ask me one question. Not where I was. Not what city, not what unit, not whether the housing was decent this time. 6 years, 19 cities. And she had never once asked me what a night shift in an intensive care unit is actually like. I do not say that to make her sound like a monster. I say it because on the drive I kept turning it over, and I kept coming up with the same answer, which was that she was busy, and that families are like that, and that I had chosen a job that made me hard to keep track of. That is the thing about being the one who pays. You get very, very good at building the excuse before anybody has to ask you for it. Somewhere south of Columbus, I stopped for gas and I could smell myself. Not sweat, chlorhexidine. That pink surgical soap gets into the cuff of your jacket and it stays there through the wash. And when you stand in the cold with the pump running, you catch it on your own sleeve. 6 years of it. My hands were cracked at the knuckles from foam sanitizer. In the fluorescent light of the gas station bathroom mirror, they looked like my grandmother's hands. And I was 30. I got to Perrysburg at 8:40 on the night of the 22nd. You have to understand what that street looks like in December. Perrysburg is the good side of the river from Toledo, the side with the brick sidewalks and the historic markers and the bank branches that look like little houses. Every yard on my parents' block had lights, real ones, hung by a service. Not the tangled strand my father used to swear at when I was a kid. Their house had lights, too, all the way up the gables. 2 illuminated deer on the lawn, heads moving. There were 4 cars in the driveway. I sat at the corner with my foot on the brake and counted them, and I felt something in my chest go tight in a way I did not have a name for yet. 4 cars meant people. People meant it had already started. I was 2 days early, and I had still somehow arrived late. Across the street, Gordon Pike was out with a shovel, clearing a dusting of snow that did not need clearing. He looked up when my headlights swung across him. He knew my car. He had known my car since I was 19. He looked right at me, and then he looked down and started shoveling faster. I noticed it. I want to be honest about that. I noticed it and I told myself it was cold out and the man was 66 years old and he wanted to get back inside. I parked at the curb instead of the driveway, because the driveway was full. And I picked up the green-wrapped box off the back seat. And I walked around to the kitchen door like I had every day of my life until I was 22. The kitchen door was unlocked. It always was until 10. Heat hit me first. And then onions. My mother browns onions in butter for the stuffing on the 22nd every year, because she believes the flavor needs 2 days to settle. The pan was on the back burner with the lid tipped, and the whole room smelled like every good December of my childhood. She had her back to me. She was standing at the dining table with a shoebox open in front of her, and she was writing name cards. The little folded ones, cream-colored, with a thin gold border. She buys them at the same place every year. She writes them in the same green ink because green photographs better against the tablecloth. She had them lined up along the table in the order she wanted people to sit. I did not decide to count. I want to be clear about that. Counting is not something I do on purpose anymore. When you spend 6 years reading drip rates and pupil sizes and how many seconds it has been since the last breath, your eyes just count. It is not a choice. It is a thing that got installed. 12 cards? 12 chairs. The leaf already in the table and the folding chairs already up from the basement, mismatched at the far end the way they always were. I read them left to right without meaning to. My father, my mother, Kendall, Trevor, Aunt Bev, Uncle Denny. There too, a name I did not recognize. Then another one I did not recognize. Cheryl. And a card at the head that just said Grandma Ruth in bigger letters because my mother thinks that is respectful. 12. I stood in the doorway with a wrapped box in my arms, and I read all 12 of them twice, and my name was not on the table. Mom! She turned around and for about 3 seconds her whole face opened up. I need you to know that part, because it is the part I have gone back to more times than any other. She was genuinely glad. Her hand went up to her mouth and her eyes went wet and she said my name, and it was the good version, the one with the little lift at the end. Danny. And then it closed. I watched it happen. I have watched 100 faces change in 100 bad rooms, and I have never seen one do it faster. It was like a light going off behind a window from the inside. The glad part did not fade. It got put away. She set the pen down on the tablecloth. She did not cap it. What are you doing here? Charlotte ended. I didn't take the extension. I lifted the box a little. I wanted to surprise you. On the 22nd, she looked at the table, she looked at the cards, and then she said the sentence, and I want to describe her voice exactly. Because the voice is the whole thing. It was not cold. It was not angry. It was not even embarrassed. It was the voice she uses to ask if you want more potatoes. Well, honey, there's no seat for you. The table's full. I stood there. I mean, we weren't expecting you, she said. You never come. So I planned for 12. And 12 is what fits. You know how the leaf is. It only goes out the one length. The onions were making that low sound onions make. Somewhere past the archway I could hear the television and a burst of laughter. 2 men. One of them my father. You weren't expecting me, I said. Well, no. She picked the pen back up. Not to write. Just to have it. How would I be? You didn't call. I called on the 14th. You didn't say you were coming. That was true. She had me there. And she knew she had me there. And I watched her relax about 1/4 of an inch because of it. She turned back to the cards and squared the edge of one with her thumbnail. Here's the thing about my mother that took me 30 years to understand. She was not lying to me. In that moment, she believed every word she said. The table only goes out one length. 12 is what fits. She had built the whole thing so that by the time it reached her mouth, it was already a fact about furniture instead of a decision about a daughter. The trash can was under the sink with the cabinet door standing open, the way she leaves it when she is working. Coffee grounds, a butter wrapper, onion skins in a papery drift, and on top of all of it, face up, one of the cream-colored cards with the gold border, folded and then unfolded again. It had been written on and then set aside. I could not read it from where I stood, and I did not walk over and pick it out of the garbage, because I was 30 years old, and I still had some idea of myself as a person who does not do that in her mother's kitchen, whose name was on it. Whether the pen skipped, whether she wrote mine out of habit before she remembered and stopped halfway. She took the trash out that night before I was even back on the highway. I looked at the far end of the table where the 2 folding chairs were, the ugly ones with the vinyl seats, the ones that come up from the basement every year and go back down on the 26th. There are 2 more of those downstairs, I said. My voice came out very quiet. I did not plan for it to. I can go get one. I'll take the end. I don't need a real chair. She did not look up. She squared another card. "It would throw off the numbers," she said. "And there's the pictures." I did not know what she meant by the pictures. Not yet. My father came through the archway with a beer in his hand and stopped dead. "Danny, he said it like a door opening." That was always my father. Whatever was happening in a room, he arrived in it warm. He put the beer down on the counter without looking and crossed the kitchen and hugged me with the wrapped box still between us. And he smelled like Old Spice and garage. "Look at you. You're skinny. Diane, look at her. She's skinny." "She's not skinny. Ray. She's skinny." He held me out at arm's length. 61 years old, gray coming in at the sides, a plaid flannel with a tear at the elbow that my mother had been threatening to throw out since I was in high school. "You drive straight through 9 hours. 9 hours. He shook his head like it was an accomplishment. "You eat. And I want you to sit with that for a second, because it matters later." My father was the one who asked if I had eaten. Kendall came in from the living room before I could answer, and Trevor came in behind her, and the temperature of the room changed again. My sister is 3 years younger than me, and she has a way of entering a space that takes up the doorway. She had her hair done, not blown out for a party. Done, the kind that costs $180 and lasts 8 weeks. "Oh my God," she said. "Danny." She hugged me. It was a real hug. And that is one of the hardest things about my sister, that the hugs are real. "You didn't say you were coming." "Nobody says that anymore," I said. She laughed. Trevor did not. Trevor said hello and shook my hand, which is a thing he does. And then he looked past me at the table with the 12 cards on it, and then he looked at my mother. Nobody said anything for about 4 seconds. 4 seconds is a long time in a kitchen. Then my mother clapped her hands together once, briskly, the way she does when she is closing a subject, and said, "Well, since you're here, take your mail." She went to the counter by the door where the mail lives in a wicker tray and came back with a stack about 2 inches thick, held together with a rubber band that had gone brittle and left a white line across the top envelope. "That's all yours," she said. "It's junk. It's all junk. I keep telling them to stop, but they don't stop." I took it. Of course I took it. There were maybe 40 envelopes in there, and I had been using that address as my permanent one since I was 22, because when you move 19 times, you need one address that stays put, and my parents' house was the only fixed point I had. I put it on the counter by the microwave, and I did not look at it again. Then I walked into the living room to say hi to my aunt. That is where I saw it. Their mantel is stone, and it holds 4 things: a clock, 2 candlesticks, and, that December, a photograph in a wide black frame, professionally printed, propped on a little easel stand. 4 people. My father in a red flannel, my mother in cream, Kendall and Trevor in matching dark green, all of them in sweaters that went together on purpose. A pale gray studio backdrop with a soft light behind them so their edges glowed. My father's hand was on Trevor's shoulder. I stood in front of it. Next to the frame, on the mantel, was a shallow basket. And in the basket was a stack of folded cards. And each one had that photograph on the front, printed, glossy, and each one had an address label on the back. And each one had a stamp on it, leftovers, the extras you order because the price break is at $200. I counted them. I already told you I do not decide to count. 19 left in the basket. "Kendall," I said, and my voice was perfectly normal. "Where'd you get these taken?" she answered before my mother's mouth was even open. "Yellow door, over in Sylvania, fast, too fast, and too much detail. The way people talk when they have already had the conversation in their head. They book up, so we did it early. It was like the 2nd week of November. Right. Mom had to reschedule once. Second week of November, 6 weeks before I walked through that door. They had gotten dressed in matching sweaters and driven to a studio in Sylvania and stood under a light and smiled. And then they had chosen a proof and paid for it and picked a cardstock and printed 200 and sat at that dining table with a list and a wet sponge and put a stamp on every single one and mailed them to everyone my mother had ever met, and not one person in that house, in 6 weeks, had said the sentence. What about Danielle? It had not been an argument. Nobody had fought about me and lost. That is what I understood standing in front of that mantel with a beer laughing in the next room. I had not been left out of Christmas Eve. I had been left out in the second week of November, and it had gone to the printer. Thank you, I said. Kendall tilted her head, for what I did not answer her, because I did not have one yet. I nodded, that was all. I nodded at my aunt, and I nodded at Trevor, and I said something about the drive being long. And I walked back through the kitchen past 12 name cards in green ink, and I picked my coat up off the back of the chair where I had laid it 11 minutes earlier. My mother said, "You're not staying." She sounded surprised. I have gone over that too. I do not think she was performing. I think she genuinely believed that a person could be told there was no seat for her and then go upstairs and sleep in her childhood bedroom and come down in the morning and help with the pie crust. "I've got a place across the river," I said. "That awful little apartment. It's fine." Danny. My father. From the archway. I got my keys out of my coat pocket. My hands were steady. I noticed that they were steady, and I remember being almost interested in it, the way you are when a patient's numbers are wrong in the direction of fine. "Merry Christmas, Mom." I went out the kitchen door. He followed me. Of course he followed me. He came down the 2 concrete steps in his slippers, no coat, arms crossed against the cold, and he got to me at the driver's side door. Hey, come on. It's late, Dad. You know how she gets about the table. It's not about you." I looked at him. 61 years old in the porch light, breath going up in a cloud, standing in the snow in house slippers because he did not want the last thing to be his daughter driving off. "Okay," I said. "She's had a lot going on, the gutters, and Bev's been calling every day about the—" "Okay, Dad." He stopped. He rubbed the back of his neck, and then he said it. "Come by tomorrow. Danny, just come by. Danny." He had not called me that in the whole time I was inside. Inside I was she and her and Danielle, don't start. It was only out here in the dark, with nobody listening, that I got to be Danny again. I did not understand what that meant yet. I only felt it in that stupid animal way you feel things before you can defend them. And what I felt was that I had just been handed something warm through a crack in a door that was closing. "Good night," I said. I got in. He stood there until I pulled away from the curb, and in the mirror I watched him watch me go. And then I watched him turn around and go back up the 2 steps and inside, into the light, where the rest of them were. The green-wrapped box was still on the passenger seat. I had carried it in and I had carried it back out and nobody had asked what it was. I drove. Perrysburg to East Toledo is 20 minutes if the bridge is clear. I took Route 20 and then I got on the interstate and I went over the Maumee River. And the water down there was black with the city lights lying on top of it in long, broken lines. And I did not cry. I want to be honest about that because I think people expect the crying. I did not cry. What I did instead was start remembering in order, without meaning to, like somebody had opened a file. 19 contracts. Charlotte. Before that, Tucson. Before that, a hospital outside Bakersfield where the air smelled like almonds and diesel. Fresno. 2 in Ohio, but 4 hours south, in a town where the only thing open after midnight was a gas station that sold fishing licenses. Baltimore, in a unit that ran 8 over capacity for the entire 13 weeks. Sioux Falls, Springfield, twice. Room 311, room 7, bed 4, bed 4, bed 4, that is what you say for years. Bed 4, because names go on wristbands and rooms are how you find people fast. Thanksgiving in Tucson, eating a turkey sandwich standing up at the med station at 4 in the morning, Christmas in Baltimore, Christmas in Fresno, Christmas in Springfield, where a man named Walter held my hand for 6 hours and asked me twice if I was his daughter, and I said yes both times because it was Christmas and because his daughter was not coming. I took those shifts. Every year. I volunteered for them. I told the schedulers I did not mind. I had nobody waiting. And every year I got a little bump in the differential for the holiday. And the bump went where everything went. 6 years of other people's worst nights. And I had driven 9 hours for a folding chair. And the folding chair would have thrown off the numbers. I got off at Front Street. My apartment is above a dry cleaner and it has one window that faces a wall. I parked in the gravel lot behind it and I sat there with the engine ticking as it cooled. My phone lit up on the console. Kendall. 3 words. Are you okay? She had never sent me that before. Not once in 6 years. I looked at it for a long time. Then I turned the phone face down. And I got out, and I left the green box on the seat, and I went up. There is one chair in my apartment. I want to describe the place, because 6 years of $2,340 a month has to go somewhere. And where it went was here, 1 room, plus a bathroom, a mattress on the floor with a fitted sheet and a comforter I bought in Sioux Falls. A card table, 1 folding chair, metal, the exact same kind that lives in my parents' basement, which I bought at a Goodwill on Woodville Road for $4, and which is, I realize now, the only chair I have ever owned. A coffee maker on the counter, a milk crate with 11 books in it, no couch, no television, no pictures on the walls. Because when you move 19 times, you stop putting holes in things. The radiator knocks. The window faces the brick side of the building next door, close enough that on a clear day you can see the mortar. I paid $525 a month for it. I sat down on the folding chair at the card table at 11:40 on the night of December 22nd, and I opened my laptop, and I logged into my bank. I had never done this. That is the part that people do not believe. So let me say it plainly. In 6 years, I had never added it up. I knew the number that left. I looked at that number 12 times a year the way you look at a stop sign. 2,340. Gone. On the 15th. Fine. What I had never done, not once, was multiply. I know exactly why. Because the day you multiply, you have to decide something. And as long as I did not multiply, I got to keep being a good daughter for free. I set up a filter. Recurring transfers, outgoing, all history. And there it was. A column of the same number going back and back and back. Page after page, and the pages had a rhythm to them like a heart monitor. I started with the first year. 2,340 times 12 is 28,080. I remember that first year. I was 24. I took a contract in Fresno because it paid a premium, and the housing stipend was decent. Except, the housing they found me fell through 2 days before the start date. So for the first 11 nights, I slept in the back of the car in the hospital garage on level 4, where the security guard knew and let it go. I showered in the staff locker room at 5 in the morning before day shift came in. I told my mother I had a studio. I told her it had a little balcony, 28,080. Second year, 56,160. That was the year Marisol got married, my roommate from nursing school, my actual best friend. And the wedding was in San Antonio in April, and the flight was $311, and I told her I could not get the shift covered. I could have gotten the shift covered. Third year, 84,240. Fourth, 112,320. That is when I stopped and got up and walked to the window and looked at the bricks, because somewhere in the fourth year is when the molar started. Lower right. It would go quiet for months and then wake up at 2 a.m. and I would stand in a supply closet with my jaw in my hand until it passed. I had insurance. I had good insurance. What I did not have was the $1,400 for the part. Insurance does not cover. Because the $1,400 was already spoken for on the 15th. 3 years. I carried that tooth for 3 years. I sat back down. Fifth year. 140,400. Sixth year, which had just finished with the payment on the 15th of December, 7 days before I walked into that kitchen. $168,480. I typed it into a blank document and made the font bigger, which is an insane thing to do. And I did it anyway. 72 payments. $168,480. For a house I did not own, in a town I did not live in, with a table that only goes out the one length. I sat with that for a while. The radiator knocked twice and went quiet. And then, because my brain does what it does, because I am the person who checks the drip and then checks it again, a thought came in sideways and put its hand on my shoulder. That is not all of it. That is only the transfers. That is only the thing that had a rhythm. The thing that showed up in the filter because I had set it to repeat. There were the other times. The times my mother called and it was not the 15th. I opened a new tab. I started going through 6 years of statements 1 month at a time, looking for the ones that did not repeat. It took me until 3 a.m. to find all 3 of them. The first one was in March of the second year, $4,100. I remembered the call before I even found the transfer. My mother, at 8 a.m. my time, which meant she had been up since 5 with it. The county had sent something about the property taxes. She kept saying the word escrow like it was a person who had wronged her. My father got on the phone for about 30 seconds and said it was handled. He was handling it. And then my mother took the phone back and said it was not handled. 4,100. The second one was 2 years after that. 3,800. The third was the following spring. 3,800 again. $11,700 in property taxes on a house with somebody else's name on the deed. Then the roof. October of the 4th year. There had been a storm and shingles came off the back slope over the sunroom, and my mother sent me a photograph of a bucket on the floor. $8,900. And I paid the contractor directly because my father said it was easier that way. And the furnace, the January after that, $5,400 on a Tuesday, 22 degrees outside. And my mother on the phone saying she could see her breath in the kitchen. $14,300 for the roof and the furnace. I did the last addition by hand on the back of an envelope, because at 3 a.m, I did not trust a machine to tell me something that size. 168,480, 11,700, 14,300, $194,480. I sat in a folding chair I bought for $4, in a room with one window that faces a wall, and I looked at that number, That is more than the house I would try to buy the following March. That is more than 3 of them. And here's the thing that got me, the thing that made me put the pen down and put both hands flat on the card table. I could not remember volunteering. That sounds like a small thing. It is not. I had told the story 100 times. To Marisol, to Tasha, later, to a travel recruiter in an airport bar in Phoenix who asked why I never took a permanent position. I always said the same sentence. My parents got in over their heads and I stepped up. I stepped up. That was my version. I was the one who stepped up. But sitting there at 3 in the morning, I tried to actually find the moment, the conversation, the day. Who said the number 2,340 first? And I could not find it. I could find the second conversation. I could find the third and the 10th. But the first one had a hole in it where the beginning should be. The way a room has a hole in it when you have walked through the door so many times you have stopped seeing the door. So I went further back, because that is what you do when a chart does not make sense. You keep flipping until you find where it started. And what came up was a kitchen table on a Tuesday in October when I was 22 years old. I was working nights at St. Rita's then. My first real job, still on orientation, still terrified. I had come by after dinner to drop off a casserole dish and I was already late. My father was sitting at the kitchen table with the light on over it and everything else in the house dark. He had a manila folder open and a ballpoint pen and his reading glasses down on his nose. And he looked up when I came in and smiled at me like I was the thing he had been waiting for all day. "Hey, kid. 2 seconds. He slid a piece of paper across the table toward me, turned it around so it faced me, the way you do. "They redid the car insurance. You're still on ours, so they need you on the form." There was a little pencil mark next to a line at the bottom. He had put it there himself. "Right there, where the check is." I looked at the clock on the stove. I was going to be late for handoff. And being late for handoff in your 3rd month is the worst thing in the world. I signed it. I did not read 1 word of it. I signed my name next to a pencil mark on a piece of paper my father handed me in his own kitchen, and I capped his pen and gave it back. And he got up, and he went to the counter, and he poured coffee out of the pot into a travel mug for me, and he screwed the lid on and put it in my hand. "Drive careful," he said. "It's dark and it's wet." I remember the weight of that mug in my hand. I remember thinking, walking out to the car, that I was lucky, that some people did not have anybody who poured them coffee. That is a good memory. I had it for 8 years. It was one of the good ones. I sat in my apartment at 3 in the morning, 30 years old, with a number written on the back of an envelope. And I thought about that night for no reason at all. Two things I could not explain, both of them mine, both of them warm at the time. I did not know yet that they were the same thing. At 1:17 in the morning on Christmas Eve, I called my bank. I need to correct my own timeline here, because I have told this part wrong before. It was not the same night, it was the next one. I did the adding on the 22nd going into the 23rd, then I slept 4 hours, and I got up, and I spent the entire 23rd doing absolutely nothing. I mean nothing. I lay on a mattress on the floor, and I looked at a ceiling. My phone had things on it, and I did not touch it. Around 4, I ate a bowl of cereal standing at the counter. Around 6, it got dark. Around 10, I brushed my teeth and lay back down. And at 1:17 in the morning I sat straight up in the dark like somebody had said my name. I did not deliberate. I want that on the record, because people assume there was some long dark night of the soul. There was not. There was a woman on a mattress on the floor who suddenly could not stand 1 more hour of it. And who knew that banks are open at 1 in the morning because banks are the only thing besides hospitals that never close? I turned on the light. I sat in the folding chair. I called the number on the back of my card. Press 1 for English. Press 2 for account services. Thank you for calling. My name is Bernard. How can I help you tonight? He had a low voice and the flat vowels of somebody from around here, not a call center in another time zone pretending. A man in a building somewhere off E75, working the overnight, 4 days before Christmas. I need to cancel a recurring transfer. I can help you with that. Can I get your account number and then a couple verification questions? I read him the numbers off the top of the statement. He asked me my mother's maiden name, which is Vasco. He asked me the street I grew up on. Keys clicking. Okay, Miss Kovac, I've got the account. I'm showing one scheduled recurring outgoing transfer. Can you confirm the amount and the day of the month for me? $2,340. The 15th. That's what I've got. A pause, and more clicking. And that's going out to a mortgage servicer on a loan in the name of Raymond and Diane Kovac. Do you want me to read the full account back to you? No. The word came out fast. I heard it come out fast. That's okay, he said. Then he read it back to me anyway, slowly, all of it. Because that is the procedure, and he was following the procedure. And I sat there and listened to my father's whole legal name in a stranger's mouth at 1 in the morning. And you'd like to cancel this transfer? Is this a permanent cancellation? Or would you like to skip the next occurrence and keep the schedule in place? Permanent? Just so I make sure I've got it right, because I can't undo it from my side once it's processed. You want the recurring transfer removed entirely? Yes. All right. More clicking. Maybe 6 seconds. That's done. The schedule's been removed. Nothing will go out on the 15th. 6 years, 4 minutes. I did not say anything. I could hear him not saying anything either. And I could hear a printer going somewhere behind him. Then he said, "Anything else on the account before I close this out? No? Okay." And then, in a completely different voice, not a script voice. Rough one, I laughed. It came out of me sideways, and it did not sound like laughing. "Yeah," I said. "Kind of a rough one." "Yeah," he said. "We get a lot of those this week. People think it's the quiet week. A beat. For what it's worth, you don't have to have a reason. It's your money, and it's your account, and you're allowed—" "Thanks. Bernard. You're very welcome. Thank you for banking with us, and I hope you have a good rest of your night." And that was it. He went back into the script and closed it out the way he was supposed to, and he hung up. And I never spoke to him again. I want to say something about that man. In the 6 weeks I am telling you about, I was in rooms with my mother, my father, my sister, my brother-in-law, my aunt, and about 9 other people who had known me since I was a child. The first person to say I was allowed was a stranger on an overnight shift whose last name I do not know. I put the phone down on the card table. The screen dimmed. Then it went black, and the room was so quiet. I mean actually quiet. No radiator, no highway, nothing. And in that quiet I could hear the refrigerator running. That little hum they make. It cycles on. And then a while later it cycles off, and you never notice either one. I sat in a metal folding chair at a card table in a $525 apartment above a dry cleaner, and I listened to my own refrigerator, and I realized I had lived in that room for 2 years, and I had never once heard it. There had always been something else running underneath. I slept until 2 in the afternoon on Christmas Eve, which I had not done since nursing school. When I woke up, the light in the room was already going gray, and my first thought was that I had nowhere to be, And my second thought was that this was the first Christmas Eve in 6 years when that was true. And my third thought was of my grandmother. I did not call first. That runs in the family. Apparently, Ruth Vasco lives in Maumee, in a 1-story house on a street of 1-story houses, with a carport instead of a garage, and a concrete goose on the front step that she dresses for the seasons. That night the goose had a red scarf on it. She opened the door before I knocked. "There you are," she said. Not, "What are you doing here?" Not, "Is everything all right?" There you are. Like I was late. She is 79. She is about 5'1" now, which is shorter than she used to be. And she was wearing a cardigan over a house dress and the same slippers she has worn since I was in middle school. Behind her, the house smelled like coffee, which is what her house always smells like, at every hour, because she drinks it at 10 at night and sleeps fine. We ate at the kitchen table, because the dining room table has been covered in fabric and a sewing machine and stacks of paper since my grandfather died. Ham rolls out of a bag, green beans from a can with bacon in them, 2 slices of pie that she cut before the meal because she says life is short. She did not ask me about my parents. I want you to understand how strange that was. My grandmother is a woman who, over a 5-minute phone call, will ask you about 11 people by name. She keeps a list. She knows whose knee is bad. That night she asked me about the drive up from Charlotte, and about whether the Honda was making that noise still, and about a nurse named Erin I had mentioned 2 years ago, and whose whole situation she remembered better than I did. She did not say the word Perrysburg once. She did not ask about my mother, and my mother is her daughter. Around 8, she got up and started running water in the sink, and I got up to help, and she waved me back down with a wet hand, which is a thing grandmothers do. We got to talking about the year I turned 22. I do not remember how, and I told her the driver's license story. Because it is a story I tell. "I lost my license that fall," I said. "Do you remember this, at the Waffle House on Reynolds? After a night shift, I had it out to pay and then it was just gone. And I turned that whole booth upside down and made the poor girl check under everything. You called me crying. I did not call you crying. You called me at 7 in the morning and you were crying. I was tired." She said, to the sink. And then I had to sit at the deputy registrar for 2.5 hours to get a new one, and the picture on the new one is the worst picture that has ever been taken of a human being. I had been up for 26 hours. She laughed. It is a good laugh. It goes up at the end. You still have it. They give you a new one every 4 years. Grandma, that thing's long gone. She said again. I told her about the doorbell camera then, because we got onto her neighbor and a package that went missing off a porch 2 doors down. You should get one of those cameras, I said. The kind that goes where the doorbell is. I put one on Mom and Dad's a couple years back when she got herself worked up about the break-ins over on Louisiana Avenue. It's still going. It's on my email even. I never switched it over. I don't want a thing on my house that records. It only records when somebody comes up. That's what I said. She set a plate in the rack. I don't want a thing on my house that keeps what people do. I laughed at her. I actually laughed at my grandmother. That's because you've never needed one, I said. She did not answer that. She finished the last plate and shut the water off, and she stood there for a second with her back to me and her hands on the edge of the sink. Then she turned around, drying her hands on the towel, and she looked at me straight on. Danielle. Yeah. Have you counted it? I did not understand the question. I thought she meant the table. I thought somehow she already knew about the 12 name cards. that my mother had called her or my aunt had called her, and that this was my grandmother's way of saying she had heard. 12, I said. There were 12 of them, and there were 12 chairs. I offered to take one of the folding ones from the basement, and she said it would throw off the numbers. My grandmother looked at me for a long moment. She did not correct me. She just nodded once, slowly, and hung the towel on the oven handle, and said, "Have some more pie." On the drive home, I got as far as the on-ramp before it caught up with me. She had not asked about Kendall. In 79 years. In every phone call. In every kitchen. My grandmother has always asked about Kendall. I put my phone in airplane mode on the night of the 23rd, and I did not take it off until the morning of the 26th. That was not a strategy. I did not sit there thinking, I will let them stew. I put it in airplane mode because I did not want to hear it. The same way you turn off a monitor that is alarming for a reason you already know about. On the morning of the 26th, I made coffee, and I sat in the folding chair, and I turned it back on. It took about 4 seconds to load, and then it started. 41 missed calls. 23 text messages, 2 voicemails, which is more voicemails than I had received in the entire previous year, because nobody my age leaves voicemails except when something has gone badly wrong. I did not listen to the voicemails. Not that day. What I did was read the texts in order, oldest to newest, all the way through, without answering, the way you read a chart from admission forward instead of starting at the last note. They come out in a shape. I did not see it while I was living it. I saw it that morning, all at once, laid out with timestamps like a fever curve. 9:47, the night of the 23rd. From my sister. Are you okay? That was the one I had already seen. 11:02, my sister again. Mom feels terrible, BTW. She's not good at that stuff. Call me tomorrow, okay? Then nothing until the 24th at 4 in the afternoon. 4:12. My mother. Danny, are you coming by tomorrow? Let me know for the ham. Let me know for the ham. 5:30. My mother. Danny. 7:55. My mother. I don't know why you're being like this. Your father is upset. Christmas morning, 9:06. My father. One text, the only one he sent the entire time. Merry Christmas, kid. I read that one twice. Christmas afternoon, 2:30. My sister. Everybody's asking about you. 3:15. My sister. It's a little embarrassing, honestly. Then a jump, and the tone goes over a cliff. The 26th, 6:11 in the morning. My mother. And here is where I stopped being Danny. Danielle. The bank shows the transfer was canceled. 6:13. Was that you, or is that an error? 6:14. Danielle. 6:20. Answer your phone. 6:31. And this is the one I read about 9 times. I have never in my life seen anything so selfish. Over a chair. Do you understand what you are doing to your father? Over a chair. Then, 7:02. From my mother. And I want you to hear the gear change. I'm sorry about Christmas Eve. I handled it wrong. Please call me so we can talk about the 15th. And then one from Trevor. Trevor sent exactly 1 text message in 3 days. 7:40 in the morning on the 26th. No greeting. Danielle, is the 15th still happening? Need to know by the 2nd. Thanks. Need to know by the 2nd. My brother-in-law, who had shaken my hand in that kitchen like a man closing on a house, wanted a deadline. I sat with all of it in front of me, and I scrolled up and down through 3 days of my family. And I was looking for something. And it took me a while to work out what. Nobody had asked about the 23rd, 41 calls, 23 texts. Not one of them said, "What happened?" Not one of them said, "Why did you leave?" Not one of them said the words name card or table or photograph. My mother said, "I handled it wrong." One time, in a sentence that had the 15th in it. That was the entire accounting. They were not confused about why I had gone. They knew exactly why I had gone. They had simply decided, all 4 of them, independently or otherwise, that the reason did not require discussion, and that the only live question was the money. And I understood something that morning that I could not have understood in that kitchen with the onions going. They had not thrown me out of Christmas because they were angry with me. There was no fight. I had not done anything. If I had done something, there would have been a text about it. People love to tell you what you did. I got left off the table for the same reason you leave a folding chair in the basement. Because it does not go with the set. Because it is not part of the picture. Because you only bring it up when the numbers require it. And this year, the numbers did not require it. I was not family they were mad at. I was infrastructure. You do not send a text message to the furnace asking how it feels. I put the phone down. My coffee had gone cold and I drank it anyway. Then it lit up again. On the table, buzzing against the metal. And my mother's name came up on the screen for the 42nd time. I let it ring out, and I got up and got my coat. Because I was out of milk, and because it was the day after Christmas, and because life is extremely stupid that way and does not care what is happening to you. You still need milk. She was waiting by my car, the Kroger on Woodville Road, the day after Christmas, 4 in the afternoon, and the lot was full of people returning things. I came out with 2 bags and there was my mother, standing at the driver's side of a Honda with 190,000 miles on it, in her good coat. She had driven 25 minutes and across a river, and then she had waited. I do not know how long. Long enough that her nose was red. "Mom, put your groceries in the car." I put my groceries in the car. I closed the trunk and turned around and my mother looked at me, and I had this stupid flare of hope. And I am embarrassed about it to this day. Some part of me thought, she drove out here. She sat in a parking lot in the cold. That is what a person does when they are going to say sorry. Here is the first thing she said. "When does it go back on?" Not, "How are you?" Not, "I've been calling." Not, "Are you all right?" "When does it go back on?" "It doesn't," I said. "Danielle, it doesn't go back on. Mom." She made a sound with her teeth. "Your father hasn't slept. Do you know that? He's been up 2 nights. He's 61 years old." "There's no seat for me," I said. "That's what you said." "There's no seat for you." "The table's full." "Oh, for God's sake." "No. I'm actually asking." A woman went past us with a cart and I waited until she was gone. And I kept my voice completely level, because the second you raise your voice with my mother, you have handed her the whole thing. "There's no seat." When did the seat go away? It didn't go away. The leaf only goes out 1 length. I know. You told me. So when I was 22 and I lived in that house, where did I sit? She looked at me. When Aunt Bev brings a boyfriend, where does he sit? That's different. Where does he sit? "Mom, there's a chair from the basement," she said, and she heard it come out of her mouth, and I watched her decide to keep going anyway. That's not the point. That is the entire point. And this is where she switched. This is the thing about my mother that I have never been able to explain to anybody who has not lived with one. She never defends the position. She abandons it and takes a new one. And she does it so smoothly that if you are not watching for it, you will find yourself arguing about something else entirely, and losing that, too. "It was the pictures," she said. "What pictures?" "The Christmas card." "Danielle." We did the photographs the second week of November, and we ordered 200 of them, and they were already out. They were already in people's houses. She said it like she was explaining a rule of physics to a child. "How would that look? You show up and you're not on the card." Everybody would have asked. Bev would have asked. Cheryl would have asked. I stood in a grocery store parking lot and I understood my mother completely, maybe for the first time in my life. I had not been excluded from a dinner. I had been excluded from a photograph 6 weeks earlier, and the dinner just had to match the photograph because the photograph had already been mailed. "You could have called me in November," I said. "You never come?" "You could have called me." "You never come? Danielle, 6 years. You want me to hold a chair for 6 years? I couldn't come because I was working every holiday. That's your choice." It was not my choice. And I stopped, because I could feel it coming, and I made a decision in about a quarter of a second that I have never regretted. I said it in a parking lot. Out loud. For the first time in 6 years. $194,480. She blinked. "That's what I've put into that house. 72 mortgage payments. $23.40 each. $11,700 in property taxes across 3 years. $14,300 for the roof and the furnace." My voice did not shake. I have wondered about that a lot. $194,480. Mom, that's the number. And my mother did not flinch at the number. I have thought about this more than anything else she said or did, more than the name cards, more than the photograph. She did not gasp. She did not say, "That can't be right." She did not say, "Oh, honey." The number itself did not land on her at all, because on some level she already knew it, or knew enough of it. What landed on her was something else, and I watched it land, and her face went hard in a way I had never seen. "You've been keeping track?" she said, quietly, almost wounded, like I had gone through her purse. "You sat down and you added us up." "Yes." She pulled her coat tighter and looked off across the parking lot at the cart return, and then she looked back at me, and she said the last thing she said to me for 2 months, and she said it in the voice she uses to ask if you want more potatoes. "Then I guess you were never really giving it, were you?" She walked to her car. I stood there between a Honda and a shopping cart somebody had left out, with the light going, and I watched her back out and drive off toward the bridge. 9 hours. I drove 9 hours, in all of it. From the doorway to the parking lot, not one person in my family ever asked me why I came home. I thought that was the end of it. I really did. I drove home from that parking lot and I thought, well, that is what it was. My mother is a woman who can look at $194,000 and only be offended that somebody wrote it down. That is the worst thing in my family. That is the bottom. I want to tell you what I believed for the next 3 weeks, because I believed it completely. I believed that I had been thrown away by a woman who cared more about a photograph than about her own daughter, and that the whole thing was small and sad and human and over. I was wrong about that, the way you are wrong about a diagnosis when you only ran the one test. 3 weeks later, my phone lit up again, and it was not my mother. And the person on the other end was not angry with me. That is the part I did not understand yet. I had spent my whole life braced for people who yell. Nobody had ever taught me what to do about the ones who are kind on purpose. I took a contract in Toledo. That was the first strange thing I did that January. And I did it for one reason, which was my grandmother, 79 years old, alone in a house with a carport. And I had spent 6 years being 900 miles away from her. So when the recruiter called with 3 options, and one of them was a unit 20 minutes from Mommy, I took it, and I took it at $9 an hour less than Charlotte. I did the math on the drive to the first shift. $9 an hour, 13 weeks. That is about $4,600 I was choosing not to make. For the first time in 6 years, that was allowed to be my decision. Then came the 15th. I need to describe the 15th of January to you properly, because I had built it up in my head into something enormous, and it turned out to be nothing at all. And the nothing was worse. I woke up at 11, because I was on nights. I made coffee. I sat in the folding chair. And at some point in the afternoon, I picked up my phone and opened the banking app. The way you press on a bruise. The balance was the balance. Nothing had gone out. There was no notification, no confirmation, no little line item. The 15th of January simply happened, the way the 14th had, and the 16th would. $2,340 sat in my account and did absolutely nothing. I stared at that number for a long time, and what I felt was not relief. What I felt was the specific nausea of having done something irreversible, and under that, way down, something even worse, which was guilt. Guilt over money that was mine, that I had earned holding strangers' hands in the middle of the night, that had been leaving my account for 6 years to pay for a house I was not welcome in. I sat in a metal chair and felt guilty for keeping my own paycheck. That is what 6 years does to a person. It rewires what a normal day feels like. A normal day, to me, was a day where I gave something away. Without it, I did not feel free. I felt like I had stolen something. So I started spending it. And I was terrible at it. I want you to picture this, because it is genuinely embarrassing. I went to Target on the 16th of January with the express intention of buying myself something. And I walked that store for 50 minutes and came out with a 4-pack of dish sponges and a bag of pretzels. I did not know how. The second week I made an appointment with a dentist. Lower right molar, the one I had been carrying for 3 years. The hygienist took the x-ray, and then the dentist came in and looked at it, and then looked at me, and he asked, very carefully, how long it had been like this. I said a while. He said it in the voice they use. He said this must have been extremely uncomfortable. And I said, you get used to it. He did not say anything to that. He just went and got the numbing gel, $1,100 out of pocket after insurance. I paid it with a card, and I drove back to my apartment with half my face dead, and I sat in the folding chair and cried for about 90 seconds, which is the only time I cried in the entire 6 weeks. And it was not about my mother. It was about a tooth. My first shift at the new unit was a Thursday. The charge nurse on nights was a woman named Tasha Beaumont, 41. Been there 11 years. Built like she could carry a person and had more than once. Travel nurses get a certain treatment on a new unit, not hostility. Something cooler than that. You are the one making more money and leaving in 13 weeks. So nobody invests. Tasha took one look at my badge and one look at me and said, "You from here, East Toledo." "Then why do you look like you've never been here before?" I did not have an answer for that. At about 3 in the morning, she came and found me at the med station and put a coffee down next to my elbow without saying anything about it. And that was the whole conversation. And it was more than my family had managed in 3 weeks. Kendall's text came on the 19th. It came in at 9 at night while I was pulling into the garage for a shift, and I read it sitting in the car with the engine off. Do you still have that pink blanket, the one with the satin edge you used to rub between your fingers? Mom says she threw it out, but I don't believe her. I was thinking about it today for no reason. That was all. No apology. No mention of Christmas. No mention of the 15th. Just a pink blanket with a satin edge that I had not thought about in 25 years and that she should not have remembered. And that she was right about. Because my mother did throw it out. And I had cried about that too, at 6 years old, in that same kitchen. I sat in a parking garage with my phone in my hand for 4 minutes, and then I typed back, I remember it. I want to be very clear about what I did there. I opened a door. We met on a Tuesday at a place in Uptown that used to be a hardware store. Kendall got there first and got the good table, the one by the window. And she stood up when she saw me, which she has never done in her life. She looked tired. That was the first thing. My sister always looks finished. And that day her hair was up in a clip and she had no eyeliner on, and it made her look about 19. She hugged me for too long. We ordered. She got a salad and did not eat it. And then she put both hands flat on the table and said, I need to say something, and I need you to let me get through it. Okay. What Mom did was disgusting. I did not expect that word. Nobody in my family uses that word about my mother. I was in the other room. I heard about the chair from Dad afterward, and I have not slept right since. She was not crying, but her chin was doing that thing. I should have come in the kitchen. I heard your voice. And I knew something was happening, and I stayed on the couch because I did not want it to be a thing on the 22nd, and I have thought about that every single day. Kendall. No, let me. I'm not asking you to say it's fine. She pressed a thumb under her eye. It's not fine. There's no version where you drive 9 hours and get told there's no seat, and that's fine. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you Mom feels terrible, because I don't actually know if she does. That last part is what got me. Because that was true. And true is not what my family deals in, and I had not heard anyone say a true thing out loud since the 22nd of December. I want to be honest with you about what happened to me in that restaurant. I believed her, not part way, completely. My whole chest came unlocked. And I sat there across from my sister with a plate of food I could not eat, and I thought, oh, thank God, there is one. We talked for 2 hours. And somewhere in the second hour, she started telling me about growing up, and that is when the floor started to tilt. She said, you were always Dad's. I put my fork down. You two had that whole thing, she said. The garage, the car stuff. He taught you to drive. He would not even let me sit in the car. Do you know what that was like? I used to stand in the kitchen window and watch you two go around the block. He taught you to drive. He signed me up for the school thing. He taught me at night in the Kroger lot because it was empty. Right, she said. At night, just you two. And she said it like it was proof. I did not correct her. And I am going to keep saying that, because it happened maybe 6 times in that restaurant, and every time I let it go by. She remembered the year I was 15 as the year I got a car. What actually happened was that our father's brother died and left a 19-year-old Corolla with a bad head gasket, and it sat in the driveway for 8 months, and I fixed it on YouTube. She remembered me moving out at 22 as me leaving. She remembered Mom crying when I took the first travel contract. My mother did not cry. My mother said, well, it is good money. And then she got to the kitchen table. You know what I always think about? She smiled, and it was a real smile, and it went straight through me. That fall you were at St. Rita's, you'd come by after your shift and Dad would still be up at the table with all his papers, and you two would sit there every couple weeks, like a little club. There was no club. He'd make you coffee for the road. I'd hear the machine. She shrugged. I was 17, and I remember lying in bed thinking, they've got a thing and I'm not in it. I sat there, because in my head that was one night. One Tuesday in October, one piece of paper, one travel mug. And my sister, who was in the house, who was awake, was telling me it was every couple of weeks for a whole fall. I did not chase it. I did not say, wait. What I did was file it under, she remembers things wrong, because she had gotten 6 things wrong already, and this was the 7th. That is the thing about a person who is wrong about everything. You stop checking. When the check came, she took it, which she has also never done. And while she was signing, she said, without looking up, "Are you going to buy something a place? I mean, maybe eventually. You should. Rates aren't going to get better." She capped the pen. "Is your credit good? I've never missed a payment on anything in my life." "That's not the same thing," she said, and laughed, and put her card away. Then she asked if I wanted to split a dessert. What followed was the best 3 weeks I had with my family in a decade. I want to say that plainly, because if I make Kendall sound like a villain in a mask, the whole thing stops being true. It was good. I looked forward to my phone. She texted in the mornings, not asking for anything. A photo of a dog outside her office, a thing our uncle said once at 6 in the morning when I was coming off shift. Just hope tonight wasn't bad. Nobody had ever asked me if the night was bad. On the 28th of January, she showed up at the hospital garage at 7:15 in the morning with 2 coffees and sat in my passenger seat for 20 minutes while I came down off a shift. And she did not say one word about our mother. My father called twice. That was new too. He had never been a phone person. Both times he talked about the Toledo weather and a leak under the sink, and a guy he used to work with at the plant who had passed, and both times right at the end, he said, "You doing okay out there, kid?" And I said yes. And he said, Okay, good." He never once mentioned the 15th, not in either call. I noticed that, and I put it in the column marked, "He is the good one," where I had been putting things since I was about 6 years old. My mother did not call at all. That was fine with me. That was, honestly, restful. On the first Saturday in February, Kendall took me to look at houses. She has a license. She got it 4 years ago, and she has closed, I think, 11 deals total, which she will tell you is because the market is hard, and which our mother will tell you is because Kendall has a lot going on. She was good at it. She had a folder. She had comps printed out. The first place was on Navarre, a 1940s 2-bedroom with aluminum siding and a kitchen that had been remodeled sometime around the Reagan administration. Too dark. The backyard sloped toward the house. The second one was on 6th Street, off Star, right in East Toledo, 11 blocks from where I already lived. 960 square feet. Brick. Detached 1-car garage that leaned. A front porch with a concrete step that had a crack straight across it. 2 bedrooms. And the second bedroom was so small that the door hit the closet. It smelled like an old lady's house because it had been an old lady's house. There was a hook by the back door with a metal loop on it for a dog leash, and the paint had worn away around it in a soft oval where a hand had gone 1,000 times. I stood in the kitchen and looked out the window over the sink into the backyard where there was a maple tree with one branch cut off flat. "It's small," I said. "It's small," Kendall agreed. "Where would people sit?" She laughed. Danny, you don't have any furniture. I'd get furniture. It's 92.5. It'd go for 88 if you offered. The estate wants out. She was clicking through her phone. But yeah, if you want people over, it's tight. You could seat, 6'6". I remember standing at that sink thinking about 6. It's too small, I said. We looked at one more that afternoon and I do not remember anything about it. Tasha found out about all of this the following week, at 4 in the morning, in the break room. Because at 4 in the morning, people tell each other things they would not tell a therapist. I gave her the short version. Christmas, the chair, the money, the cancellation. And now my sister. She listened to all of it eating a bowl of cereal out of a coffee mug because somebody had taken all the bowls. When I got to the part about the coffee in the garage, she stopped chewing. 3 weeks, she said. About that, after 6 years of nothing. She's trying, She went back to the cereal. My mother-in-law got real nice for about a month one time. Real nice. Called me sugar. Brought me a plant. She scraped the mug. Turned out she needed somebody to co-sign on a car. I felt my whole face close up. It's not like that. Okay, she hasn't asked me for anything. Not one thing. She hasn't even said the word money. I hear you. You don't know her. Nope, Tasha said. I don't. She put the mug in the sink and ran water in it and stood there with her back to me for a second. 3 weeks is a long time to be nice for no reason, that's all. Nobody's got that in them for free, not even the good ones. I was angry at her for 4 days. I want that on the record, because it is the most honest thing I can tell you about myself in this whole story. A woman who had known me for 2 weeks looked straight at the shape of it and told me, and I got angry at her. And I stopped sitting with her at 4 in the morning for 4 days. You do not want to be rescued from something that feels that good. On the 12th of February, Kendall called and invited me to dinner at the house. Saturday, just us. Mom's making the ham. I did not answer right away. And Kendall said gently, like she had rehearsed it and maybe she had, "There's a seat for you, Danny. I already put your card out. I called my grandmother on the Thursday before to see if she was going." "No. Grandma, it's just dinner." "I know what it is." "Kendall said she was going to call you." She did call me. Water was running somewhere behind her. I told her my knee, Ruth Vasco's knee, is real. It is also, and I say this with love, a document she produces when she does not want to be somewhere. "Your knee was fine when we went to Kroger." "Kroger has the carts." "Grandma." The water shut off. "Danielle," she said, "I have been to about 400 dinners in that house. Okay. I'm not going to this one." That was the whole thing. She said it lightly. She sounded like an old woman being stubborn about a knee, and that is exactly what I heard. And I hung up thinking my grandmother could be a real pain sometimes. I got to Perrysburg at 5:30 on Saturday, the 14th of February. 6 chairs, 6 place settings, and there, at the spot I had sat in from the time I was tall enough for the table until I was 22, was a cream card with a gold border, and on it, in green ink, was my name. She had done it right. She had used the good pen. I stood there with my coat still on and looked at a piece of paper with my name on it and felt something in my throat. And I want you to understand that a person can know exactly what is being done to her and be moved by it anyway. Both things were true in that kitchen. Both things are still true. Dinner was good. That is the hardest sentence in this story to write. Dinner was good. My mother did not apologize, and she did not have to, because the card was the apology, and everyone at that table understood the exchange rate. She called me Danny 3 times. I counted. Of course I counted. My father was on. He gets going sometimes, and when he does, he is the funniest man I know. He told the one about the forklift and the ceiling sprinkler in 1998, and he did the supervisor's voice. And my mother said, "Ray, stop," and laughed until she had to put her fork down. Trevor asked me about the unit. Actual questions. What the ratios were. Whether Toledo was different from Charlotte. Kendall reached over at one point and squeezed my wrist for no reason at all. 2 hours. For 2 hours I was in my family. Here are the 3 things I saw and did not look at. The first was my mother's face when my father was doing the forklift voice. She was laughing, and then her eyes went to me, and something crossed her face that was not warmth. It was checking. She was checking whether it was working. The second was the mantel. The photograph was gone. The black frame. The 4 of them in matching sweaters. The little easel stand. Gone. And nothing put in its place. So there was a clean rectangle in the dust on the stone. They had taken it down for me. I know what I was supposed to feel about that. What I actually felt, walking past it on my way to the bathroom, was a kind of cold I did not have language for, because you do not take a picture down. A picture that belongs on a mantel stays on the mantel. You take a picture down when a person is coming over who cannot see it. They had not stopped being those 4 people. They had put the evidence in a drawer. The third thing was the briefcase. Trevor brought a briefcase to a family dinner. It was by the coat closet when I came in, standing upright against the wall, and I registered it and thought nothing. Because Trevor is the kind of man who has a briefcase in his car the way other men have jumper cables. At 8:15, my mother started clearing plates and my father got up to help, which meant he stood next to her and handed her things. And Trevor leaned back in his chair and laced his fingers on the table and said, "Hey, so, while everybody's here, Kendall got up and went to the coat closet. We should talk about getting things straightened out," Trevor said, "just to get it all clean." "Straightened out? With the house?" He smiled. It was a genuinely pleasant smile. "There's been kind of a gap in the arrangement since December, and I think everybody's been a little unclear on where things stand. And honestly, that's on all of us. Right? Nobody ever put anything in writing." "There was never an arrangement," I said. "Well, right, exactly. That's the issue. My mother ran water in the sink. My father was drying a serving spoon that was already dry. Kendall came back and set the briefcase on the seat of the empty 6th chair and sat down next to me and put her hand on my arm. "It's not a big thing," she said. "It's actually good for you." Trevor popped the 2 latches. They made that sound briefcases make. Twice, one and then the other. "It's really just a formality," he said. He took out a single sheet of paper and turned it around so it faced me and slid it across the table. Left to right. Across the kitchen table. Turned so the writing was right side up for me. And my hands went cold. Not cold like nerves. Cold like the temperature dropped. Cold in the fingers first and then up through the wrists. The specific dead cold you get from a blood pressure cuff left inflated too long. I looked down at my own hands on the table, and I did not understand what was happening to them. There was a small pencil mark on the left margin, 3/4 of the way down, next to a line. "Take your time," Trevor said. I could hear my mother running water on a plate that was already clean. "What is it?" I said. "It's a family loan agreement. It's a template. It's nothing exotic." He tapped near the top with 2 fingers, not touching the paper. "What it does is it just documents the arrangement that's already been in place for 6 years, so everybody's protected. Including you. Especially you." How does it protect me? Because right now you've got nothing. He opened both hands. Right now you've put in, a couple $100,000. And on paper it's a gift. It's a gift to your parents. You've got no instrument, no lien, no nothing. If anything happened to your mom and dad tomorrow, that money's just gone. This puts it on record. That is what he said. And here is the thing I need you to sit with, because it is the thing that makes me the angriest of everything in this story. That was a good argument. It was true. Every fact in it was true. I had put $194,480 into a house, and I had nothing but a bank statement. Read the bottom part, Kendall said. Her hand was still on my arm. That's the part that's for you. I started reading. The first paragraph named the parties, Raymond and Diane Kovach, and me. And it spelled my middle name right, which is something almost nobody does. The second paragraph described a schedule of payments, $2,340 on the 15th of each month, resuming the 15th of March. The third paragraph was long. I got about 4 lines in, and there was a phrase in it about additional encumbrance and the words secured party, and Kendall's hand tightened very slightly on my arm. That part's just boilerplate, Trevor said. I kept reading. The fourth paragraph had 2 names in it that were not mine and were not my parents. Kendall M. Brandt, Trevor A. Brandt. I read that line twice. Then I lifted my head. Nobody was doing anything. My mother was standing at the sink with her back to us and a plate in her hand. My father was holding a towel. Kendall was looking at me with her chin tipped, sympathetic. Trevor was sitting with his fingers laced, perfectly still, and he was not looking at the paper. He was looking at my face while I read. "It's late," my mother said, to the window. "It's 8:30. Mom, you've got the drive. It's 20 minutes. "You know your daughter," my father said, and he laughed, and it came out wrong. "She reads the whole thing, always did. Bill of sale, warranty. She reads the whole thing. That was not true. That is the sentence that comes back to me at 2 a.m. sometimes. 8 years later, because it was not true, and my father was the only person in that room who knew it was not true. "Danny, Kendall, soft. You look like you're about to do something dramatic. I want to take it home. The temperature in that kitchen changed. It did not go loud. Nothing went loud." My mother set the plate down in the rack, very carefully. Kendall took her hand off my arm. "You want to take it home?" Trevor repeated, "Yes." "Sure." Long pause. "Absolutely. Of course. I'll bring it back. Take all the time you need." He was already reaching for the briefcase. I mean, obviously, sooner rather than later. Why? There's just a timing element on our end. The window on the other piece closes the last day of the month. He shrugged with one shoulder, apologetic, like the calendar was doing this to us. "That's not on you. That's just what it is. The last day of the month. 2.5 hours in that house. A card with my name on it, my father doing the forklift voice. My mother laughing so hard she put down her fork. My sister's hand on my wrist. And exactly 1 sentence in the entire evening had a date in it. I folded the paper in thirds and put it in my coat pocket, and I said thank you for dinner, and I meant it, which is the worst part. Kendall walked me to the door and hugged me and said, "I'm so glad you came." I got in the car. I sat there in the driveway with the engine running for a minute, flexing my hands on the wheel, trying to get the feeling back into them, and I could not for the life of me work out why they had gone cold. I read it 3 times. The first time I read it the way you read anything, front to back, and it slid past me, because it was written to slide past me. The second time I got a pen. There is a thing they drill into you in nursing school about verbal orders, and it is the closest thing I have to a religion. You read it back. You do not nod. You do not say, "Got it." You say the words out loud in the order they were given, and you make the other person say yes. Because the whole system is built on the assumption that somebody in the room is tired, and the somebody is usually you. So I sat in the folding chair at the card table at 11 at night with a highlighter I had to dig out of a drawer. And I read that page the way I would read a set of orders on a patient I had never met, line by line, out loud, and I underlined every single place where a sentence did something other than say what it appeared to say. There were 9. I am not going to walk you through a legal document, because I am not a lawyer and I did not become one over a weekend, and nobody in this story is going to stand up and explain the law to you. I am going to tell you what I understood by 1 in the morning, in the plainest words I have. The paper did 3 things. The first thing was the obvious thing. It put me back on the 15th, $2,340 a month, starting the 15th of March, and it did not say for how long. There was no end date anywhere on that page. I went over it 4 times looking for one. The second thing was a part Trevor had sold me on. It said that what I paid would be recorded as a debt owed to me by my parents. Recorded? That was the entire protection. It said the number would be written down. The number was already written down. I had it on a bank statement and on the back of an envelope. What that paragraph did was take the thing I already had and hand it back to me wrapped in ribbon, so that it would feel like I was receiving something. The third thing was in paragraph 4, and it took me until 1 in the morning to see it whole. Paragraph 4 said that, as part of the agreement, all parties consented to the property at that address being used as security for an additional obligation, and paragraph 4 named the parties to that obligation. And the parties were Kendall M., Brant, and Trevor A. Brant, not me, not my parents, them. I put the pen down. I read the whole thing one more time, the third time, start to finish, with everything I now knew. And it came out very simple. I would pay $2,340 a month forever on a house my sister and her husband would borrow against that same house for something that had nothing to do with me. And in exchange, I would receive a piece of paper stating that I had paid. That was the deal. That was what my father called protecting me. That was what my sister meant when she said it is actually good for you. I got up and walked around the room, which takes about 4 steps. Then I called Tasha. It was 1:15 in the morning and she was off, and she picked up on the second ring because she is that kind of person. "You okay?" "I'm fine. I'm sorry. It's late. I've got a kid who's up anyway." "What?" I told her. All of it. In order. The card with my name in green ink, and the forklift story, and the picture missing off the mantel, and the briefcase on the 6th chair, and the pencil mark, and the 9 underlined places. She did not interrupt once. When I finished, there was a pause. And then she said, "You want me to say the thing, or you want me to not say the thing? Say it." "You already knew at the table." "I didn't. Danielle." Her voice was very level. "Your hands went numb. I did not say anything." "You want to know the truth," she said. "I don't think you called me to find out what the paper says. You read the paper. You underlined 9 spots on the paper. You know what the paper says." "Then why did I call you?" "Because you want somebody to tell you it's allowed." The radiator knocked. "I had a patient last year," Tasha said. 58. mother of 4, bleeding out on the table downstairs, and they're running product into her as fast as the line will take it, unit after unit, and it's just going straight through her onto the floor. And everybody in that room knows it. And there's a moment where the attending has to stop and go find where it's coming from, and stopping feels like killing her. Every instinct in your whole body says, do not stop. Keep pushing product. More. Faster. What happened? They stopped. They found it. She went home in 11 days. I could hear her shift the phone. But that moment, where you take your hands off, that is the hardest thing anybody in that building does. And it is the only thing that has ever saved anybody. I stood in the middle of my apartment with a sheet of paper on a card table behind me. You don't owe anybody an explanation for stopping the bleed, Tasha said. That is the job. That has always been the job. After she hung up, I sat back down and opened the laptop to look up the name of the company printed in tiny gray type at the bottom of the page. And while the page was loading, I hit the wrong tab. The doorbell camera app. I had not opened it in about 2 years. It was 3 screens deep, in a folder with a weather app and a parking app for a city I no longer lived in. It loaded, and it logged me straight in because it had never logged me out. I bought that camera in the spring 2 years before all of this. My mother had gotten herself worked up over some break-ins on the other side of Perrysburg, 3 garages and a shed, and she called me about it twice in 1 week. And on the second call I said, Mom, I will just get you a camera. $230 for the unit. $60 for a guy to come out and put it on. Because my father's drill was in pieces on the workbench, the way it had been for years. And I put the subscription on my own card. And I made the account on my own email. Because my mother's password for everything is the dog we had in 1999, and my father does not have an email address. Nobody ever changed any of it. Nobody ever thought about it once. In 2 years. Including me. The app opened on a live view of my parents' front porch at 1:20 in the morning. The light was on. There was a bag of salt by the step. And down the side of the screen was the history. Going back and back and back. I scrolled. It is a strange thing to watch 2 years of a house you are not welcome in. Packages. The mail carrier. My mother going out to the car in her church coat and coming back 4 hours later with grocery bags. A raccoon in October. Kendall, over and over, in and out, in and out. My father standing on the porch at odd hours with no coat on. Just standing. More times than made sense. I got to December. I found the 22nd. There is a clip at 8:41 where I come up the walk carrying a green box. I watched myself go up those steps. I do not look like I think I look. Then a gap. Then a clip at 9:04, which is my father coming out in his slippers with his arms crossed, and me at the car, and the 2 of us standing there in the cold, and then me driving off and him going back inside. There is no sound on that one that matters, just the wind on the microphone. And then, at 9:06, 2 minutes later, there was one more. 40 seconds. I sat there with my thumb over it for a while before I pressed it. Here is what is on it. The porch light. The storm door swings out and Trevor comes through it first. And then Kendall. And the inner door does not shut all the way behind them. It hangs about 4 inches open. And neither of them notices. And they walk out to the middle of the porch and stand where the light is. Trevor says, "That's a problem." And Kendall says, "It's not a problem, she'll be over it by New Year's." You didn't see her face. I've seen her face my entire life. There is a pause. A car goes by. Then Kendall says this, and she says it in a completely normal voice, a little bored, the way you talk about somebody who is not a person to you. I told Mom not to put the card out. It was me. Okay. because if she'd sat down at that table with all of them, somebody was going to ask her something, and Bev has a mouth on her. And the last thing we need in the middle of all this is Danny doing arithmetic in front of the whole family. She's going to do arithmetic anyway. Not before the 15th of March she isn't. And Trevor says, "Kendall, if she stops, it all comes up." And my sister says, "Then she doesn't stop." I paused it. I sat in a metal chair in a room with one window facing a wall at 1:30 in the morning. And I put my hand over my mouth like there was somebody there to see me. I played it again. The last thing we need in the middle of all this. If she stops, it all comes up. It all comes up. Not, we can't make the payment. Not, they'll lose the house. Not, Mom and Dad will struggle. It all comes up. There was something underneath. There was something in that house that stayed underneath as long as $2,340 a month kept landing on it, and my sister and her husband knew what it was in December, and my exclusion from that table was not cruelty, and it was not carelessness. It was maintenance. I played the last 8 seconds a third time, and that is when I heard the other thing. Just off camera, to the left, out at the curb. There is the rumble of a garbage can being dragged, and a man's voice calls out, friendly, the way neighbors do. "That her?" And Trevor turns his head toward the street and says, "Yeah, she's not staying." And Gordon Pike says, "Huh." That is all he says. One syllable. I rewound it and listened to that syllable 3 times, because there is a whole conversation in it. And because a 66-year-old man dragging a garbage can to the curb on the 22nd of December had understood something about my family that I had needed 30 years and $194,000 to get to. I did not post it anywhere. I did not send it to anyone. I did not scream. I saved a copy. And I closed the laptop. And I sat in the dark. I drove to Perrysburg on Tuesday at 2 in the afternoon, when I knew my mother would be at the church, and I did not go to my parents' house. I parked at the curb across the street and I walked up to Gordon Pike's front door and knocked. He opened it in a cardigan with a magazine in his hand, and he looked at me for 1 second longer than a person normally looks at somebody. "Danielle," he said. "Mr. Pike, Gordon." He stepped back. "Come in out of it. His house is the mirror image of my parents. Flipped. The way they built them on that block in the 50s. Same layout, backward. It smelled like coffee and dust and a little bit like a dog, but there was no dog. He put me at the kitchen table and poured 2 cups without asking, and then sat down across from me and put both hands around his. "Your grandmother's Ruth," he said. "Vasco." "Yeah. She sold me a set of tires in 1984. Well, he tipped his head. "Wrote it up. She was at the counter. That sounds like her. Toughest counter in Toledo." He took a drink. "How can I help you?" I put my phone on the table and turned it around. "I want to play you 40 seconds, I said. "It's from the 22nd of December. You're on the end of it." He looked at the phone and then at me, and his face did a thing. "Okay," he said quietly. I played it. He listened all the way through with his hands around the cup, and he did not react at the part where my sister said, "Then she doesn't stop." He reacted before that. He reacted at, "I told Mom not to put the card out." And what he did was close his eyes. When it ended, he said, "Well, you said, huh?" I did. "What did you mean by it?" Gordon Pike put his cup down and rubbed his jaw with the flat of his hand and looked out the window over the sink at my parents' house across the street. "I've been meaning to say something to you for about 2 years, he said, "and I'm going to tell you why I didn't, and it's not going to be a good reason." "Okay." "Marion died 2 years ago in March. My wife." He said it plainly. And when that happened, I had about 11 people in my business for 4 months. Everybody with an opinion. Everybody who knew what I ought to do with the house, what I ought to do with her things. He shook his head slowly. I decided I was never going to be that to anybody. Whatever's going on across the street is across the street. That's not an unreasonable rule. It's a coward's rule, he said, and I've had 2 years to figure that out. I did not say anything. You want what I've seen, he said. It's not evidence. It's an old man at a window. I want it anyway. So he told me that there had been a repossession truck in the driveway twice. Once about 4 years ago and once maybe 2.5 years ago. Both times in the morning. Both times for my father's truck, and both times the truck came back within a week. So somebody had made it good. He told me my father sits out on that porch, not in the summer, when everybody sits out, in January, at 6 in the morning, in the dark, in the cold, in his coat, not smoking, not on the phone, just sitting. He told me my mother started going to a different church about 3 years ago, the big one out on Route 25, and stopped going to the one on Louisiana Avenue where she had gone since she was a girl. People notice that, he said. Around here, that's the kind of thing people notice. He told me that Kendall's car had been at that house 4 or 5 days a week for the last year, and that before that it had been once a month, if that. And then he said, there was a fella came to the door. What fella? Last spring sometime, April, maybe. He frowned at the window. Middle of a Thursday. Car, I didn't know. He goes up, knocks, nobody comes, and he stands there a minute, and then he puts something on the door and he leaves. On the door. Taped it up on the glass of the storm door. He made a square with his fingers, about the size of a sheet of paper. Right about eye level. What did it say? I don't know. I'm across the street, and I'm not going to walk over and read a man's door. He looked at me. It was there about 40 minutes. Then your dad's truck came in, and he got out, and he went up those steps quicker than he moves, and he took it down, and he folded it up and put it in his coat. Did he go inside? No, Gordon said. That's the thing I remember. He sat in the truck for a while. I sat in that kitchen with my coffee going cold, at the door, when he was letting me out. Gordon Pike held the storm door open with his forearm and said, in a completely different tone, like it had just occurred to him, and it had not just occurred to him. Say, you ever get mail over there? What, at your folks? You ever get anything sent there? That's my permanent address, I said. It has been since I was 22. He nodded slowly. Then you might want to go ask your mother for it, he said. We lost somebody on the 21st of February. I am not going to describe it. It is not mine to hand out, and the ones that stay with you are never the dramatic ones anyway. It was a long night that got longer and then stopped being long. What I will tell you is what a unit sounds like after. It sounds like a printer. It sounds like somebody laughing 2 rooms away about something completely unrelated. And that laugh is not disrespect. It is the building breathing. And it sounds like a mop. At about 4 in the morning, Tasha found me in the break room. I was sitting at the table with a cup of the terrible coffee, not drinking it, just holding it, which is a thing everybody does. She sat down across from me and put a Tupperware between us and took the lid off. Take one. What is it? They're supposed to be lemon bars. She pushed it an inch closer. My sister-in-law made them. They're not lemon bars, but they're not nothing. They were not lemon bars. They were some kind of dense yellow rectangle with a crust that had given up. I ate one, and Tasha watched me eat it, and then said, Right, what is happening in the middle of it? Nobody knows. She's been doing it for 9 years. We sat there. Somebody wheeled something past in the hall. You did good tonight, she said. I didn't do anything tonight. You stayed in the room. I did not say anything. You know what the family's going to remember, Tasha said. Not the code, not the meds. They're going to remember that when everybody else had somewhere to be, somebody stayed in the room. I turned the cup around on the table, and then I said the thing I had never said out loud to anybody. And I said it to a woman I had known for 5 weeks, at 4 in the morning, over a rectangle that was not a lemon bar. I've been trying to work out what I am for, I said. Tasha did not say anything, which is the correct response, and almost nobody knows it. Because I was good at this for 6 years, I could hear my own voice going flat, which is what mine does, and I was good at the other thing for 6 years. And I think somewhere in there I got the two mixed up. I think I decided that as long as I was useful, I was fine. And it worked. It works great, actually. Nobody ever tells you to stop being useful. No, they do not. And then December happened, and I found out that in my family, the whole time, that is not what I was to them. I wasn't a person they loved who happened to help. I was the help. I put the cup down. And now I can't work out which parts of me are actually me, and which parts are just the part that pays. Tasha leaned back in the chair. Can I tell you what I think and you not get mad at me for 4 days again? That's fair. You keep saying useful like it's a bad word. She tapped the table twice. It isn't. Useful is the best thing about you. You are the most useful person on this unit, and I would put you in a room with anybody. That is not the problem. Then what's the problem? The problem is who you let hold the meter. She said it slowly, like she wanted the words in the right order. You've got a whole family over there that gets to decide, day by day, whether you counted this month, and you handed them that, and then you go to work and you do the hardest job in this building and you don't count that at all, because they weren't watching. I sat there. I have a brother, she said. Younger, 29. I gave that man money for 11 years. What happened? I stopped. She shrugged one shoulder. That's the whole story. There's no big scene. I stopped. And he didn't speak to me for 2 years. And my mother told people I'd changed. And then about 1.5 years in, he got a job at the water department, and he's still there. And last summer he fixed my gutters. Did he apologize? Nope. She started putting the lid back on the Tupperware. But he fixed my gutters, and I'll take that. That's a man doing a thing for somebody with his own hands. And he could not have done it if I'd kept giving him a reason not to. She snapped the last corner of the lid. You're not going to save anybody by bleeding on them, she said. It just makes a mess. And then there's 2 of you on the floor. At 6:15, I walked out to the garage into that gray that is not quite morning. And the air had the first warm edge on it that Ohio gets in late February, the one that lies to you. I sat in the car and let the heater run. And my phone buzzed on the seat. Trevor Brandt. Hey Danielle, just circling back on the dock. Need it by Friday to make the window. Let me know if you have questions. Happy to walk through it. Happy to walk through it. I looked at that for a while, with the sun coming up over the parking garage. Then I typed back 4 words. Sunday, at the house. There were 7 cars on the street. I want you to picture me pulling up to that. I had said Sunday at the house, meaning the 5 of us, meaning the same 6 chairs, 7 cars. Kendall's friend Bridget was there. So was a woman named Colleen who does something with the church, and Colleen's husband, whose name I have never once been able to hold on to. Aunt Bev was there. My uncle was not. 9 people in that living room, counting me. and every single one of them had a drink in their hand, and every single one of them turned around when I came in. Nobody had told me it was a thing. That is a strategy. I did not know it was a strategy at the time. I know it now. Danny, Kendall came through them with her arms out. You made it. You said just us. Bridge stopped by, she said, into my hair, hugging me. It's fine. The paper was on the coffee table, not in a briefcase. Face up on the coffee table in the middle of the room, with a pen laid across it at an angle, like a prop. I did not sit down. Trevor came in from the kitchen and said, warm as a handshake. There she is. You want a beer? No, thank you. My mother was in the chair by the window with her ankles crossed. My father was standing behind her chair with one hand on the back of it, which is where he stands. Well, Kendall said, and clapped her hands once, exactly the way our mother does. Should we just get the boring part done and then eat? And 9 people looked at me. Here is what I had in my coat pocket. I had a copy of 40 seconds of audio in which my sister said, I told Mom not to put the card out, and if she stops, it all comes up. I could have played it right there, in that living room, in front of Bev and Bridget and Colleen and Colleen's husband. I have thought about that version of the evening probably 1,000 times. I did not play it. And I want to tell you why. Because it is the only smart thing I did in 6 weeks. That recording was worth exactly 1 dinner party. If I played it in that room, I would win the room. Bev would gasp. Colleen would look at her shoes. My sister would cry, and it would be real crying. And my mother would say something about the family, and by Tuesday there would be a version circulating in which I ambushed my sister with a secret recording in front of guests. And underneath all of it, whatever it all comes up meant would still be down there, untouched. And I would have used up the only thing I had to find it with. You do not open the chest and start cutting because you are angry. You find out where the bleed is first. So I stood in the middle of my parents' living room with my coat still on, and I said, I'm not signing it. Nobody moved. Danny, Kendall, tilting her head. Okay, do you want to talk about it in the... No, this is fine. This is a good spot for it. I looked at Trevor. Paragraph 4. His face did not change, but something behind it did. Paragraph 4 says the house gets used as security for a loan, I said. And the borrowers named in paragraph 4 are Kendall and Trevor Brandt. Bev said, What? That's not what it says. Trevor said, It's what it says. That's a standard consent clause. It's in every... Then it can come out. Silence. I let it sit. I have spent 6 years standing in rooms where nobody wants to say the next thing, and I have gotten very comfortable in that particular quiet. Take it out, I said, and I'll read it again. Trevor looked at Kendall. That is the whole thing. That is all anybody needed to see. He did not look at my parents, whose house it is, and he did not look at me. He looked at his wife, and my sister stood in the middle of that living room with 9 people watching and made a decision, and I watched her make it, and something in her face went from Kendall, my sister, to something with the lights off behind it. You are unbelievable, she said. Kendall, no, seriously, you are so selfish. She said it loud and she said it clean, and Colleen's husband looked at the carpet. Everybody in this family has bent over backward for 2 months. Mom made your ham, Mom put your name out, and you come in here in your little coat and you make a scene at a... Say it again. She stopped. I'm asking, I said. Selfish. Say what I kept. And that is the entire trick of my family. Right there in 1 second. Because she could not do it. She could not stand in a room and say the sentence, "She kept her own paycheck," because it sounds like what it is. "Get out of Mom's house," she said instead. I looked at my mother. My mother was looking at the window. I looked at my father. He had not said one word. Not one. From the second I walked in, he was standing behind that chair with his hand on the back of it, and he was looking at the carpet about 4 feet in front of him, and his jaw was working, and he had gone gray. I thought he was ashamed of me. That is what I thought. Driving home, I thought, my father could not even look at me. It took 5 more weeks to find out he was not ashamed of me. He was doing arithmetic. So that was February. I had a recording in my pocket that I had decided not to use. I had a sister who had called me selfish in front of 9 people. I had a mother who watched it happen and looked at a window, and I thought I finally understood the shape of my family. I thought the answer was that they wanted my money and had run out of patience about it, and that the ugly part was over, and that everything after this would just be the long quiet of not speaking. For about 3 weeks, I was almost peaceful. Then March came, and I did the most ordinary thing a 30-year-old woman can do. I found a house I liked. I filled out an application. I put in my income and my employer and my social security number, the same way I have filled out 100 forms in my life. And 4 days later, a bank told me no. That is where it actually starts. Everything before this was a family being cruel. What comes next is not that. The house on 6th Street was still on the market on the 2nd of March. 79 days, which in that neighborhood means the estate had stopped hoping. They had come down twice. 89.9. I drove over on a Sunday and parked across the street and did not get out. 960 square feet, the leaning garage, the crack across the front step, the second bedroom where the door hits the closet, and I sat there and thought about the hook by the back door with the worn oval around it, and about the maple with the one branch cut flat, and I thought, 6 is enough. 6 is more people than have ever sat down anywhere on my account. I called a lender on Monday. Not Trevor's bank, obviously. A credit union out on Airport Highway that a nurse on days had used. The woman who called me back was named Priya, and she had that particular voice that people who are good at their jobs on the phone have. Quick and warm and completely unsentimental. I gave her everything. 2 years of tax returns, which for a travel nurse is a nightmare of stipends and per diems and 11 states. Pay stubs, bank statements, my whole life in a folder. She said, "Okay, this looks fine. You've got great income. It's just messy income. That's normal for your field. I do a lot of these." She said, "Give me a few days." 4 days later, I got an email at 4:50 in the afternoon while I was making coffee before a night shift. It said the application had not been approved. I read it twice and I laughed. Actually laughed out loud in my kitchen, because it was obviously a mistake. Nurses joke about this. The system does not know what to do with a travel contract. I figured somebody's software had looked at 11 W-2 forms and given up. I called her on my way in. "Priya, hi. It's Danielle Kovac. I think there's an error on the." "Danielle." She said my name in a way that stopped me at a red light. "I was going to call you tonight. I'm glad you got me. It's the contracts, right? Because as I can get letters from, it's not the income. The light went green. Somebody honked. The income was fine," she said. "I want to be careful how I say this, because I'm not able to counsel you, and I'm not going to guess at something I don't know. But I'm going to read you what's on my screen, because you're entitled to know why we came back the way we did." Okay. "Are you driving? I'm driving." "Pull over." I pulled into the lot of a closed appliance store on Woodville Road and put it in park. "Okay," I said. "You're showing a second lien," Priya said. A home equity line of credit. It's an open account. It's reporting on all 3 bureaus. And it's in your name. I did not say anything. The property securing it is not the address you're buying. It's a different address. Where? She read it out. 406. The street I grew up on. Perrysburg, Ohio. I sat in a parking lot in front of a closed appliance store. The balance is showing at $61,000 and change, she said. And I have to tell you the rest of it, because it's what's actually driving the decision. There's a delinquency history on it. It's currently current, but it's got 11 30-day lates and 2 60s on it going back. Going back how far, Danielle? When was it opened? There was a pause, and I could hear her deciding something. And then I heard keys. She read me a date. October, 8 years earlier. I was 22 years old in October 8 years earlier. I was 3 months into my first job at St. Rita's. I was working nights. I did not have a credit card. I did not have a car payment, because I had a Corolla with a bad head gasket that my uncle died and left in a driveway. That's not possible, I said. I understand. No, I mean it isn't. That's not me being upset. In October 8 years ago, I had $400 in checking and a job I'd had for 11 weeks. No bank on earth was giving me $61,000. I hear you. They'd have wanted income. They'd have wanted the property. I didn't own. And I stopped, because I did not own the property. But somebody did. That's not I was 22. I've never taken out a loan in my life. I've never signed for anything except my car insurance. I heard my own sentence come out of my mouth. I heard it land in the car. Except my car insurance. There was a long silence on that phone. Danielle, Priya said, and her voice had changed, and she was choosing words like a person walking on ice. I want to be really clear that I'm not telling you what this is. I don't know what this is. It could be a reporting error, and those do happen. Okay, but I'm going to say one thing, and then I'm going to stop, because it's not my place. She took a breath. You're allowed to pull your own credit reports. All 3. It doesn't cost anything. And whatever's on there, it's your name on it, and you're entitled to see every line. Okay, please go look at it, she said. Tonight. I called off my shift. I have called off 2 shifts in 6 years. That was the second one. I pulled all 3 that night, sitting in the folding chair with the laptop on the card table, and I printed them at a copy shop the next morning because I needed to hold paper. 3 different companies, 3 different formats, 3 different fonts, same account, opened in October, 8 years ago. Home equity line of credit, secured by 406 Perrysburg, original credit limit $75,000, current balance $61,400 and change. Primary account holder Danielle R. Kovac, not a cosigner, not an authorized user, not a joint account with somebody else first. Primary, me. There is a thing that happens to you at a certain point in a bad night on the unit where your hands stop being nervous and your voice drops, and you get extremely calm. And it is not courage, it is just what the body does when the panic has nowhere to go. That happened to me at a card table at 2 a.m. with 3 credit reports fanned out in front of me. I got a legal pad. I have never in my life been more myself than I was in the next 4 hours. I made columns, date, amount, source, verified. It is the same thing I do at the start of every shift with a patient I have never met. When the chart is a mess and the handoff was rushed and there are 11 things you have been told, and only some of them are true. You do not argue with the chart. You do not get emotional at the chart. You find out what is actually documented and you write it down in order. Column 1, what the reports agreed on. All 3 said the same open date, the same original limit, the same address. When 3 separate outfits that do not talk to each other tell you the same thing. That is not a software error. That is a fact with 3 witnesses. Column 2, the delinquency history, 11:30 day lates, 260s. And when I mapped the dates, they clustered. Nothing for the first 2 years, then a run of them starting about 6 years ago. And then it went quiet. 6 years ago. Column 3, my own bank statements, which I already had open in another window. And this is where I put the pen down. The late stopped in January 6 years earlier. That is the month I started paying $2,340 on the 15th. I sat back in a $4 chair. I did not have the mechanism yet. I want to be honest about the order things came in, because it did not arrive as a revelation. It arrived as a shape. Something had been drowning. And then it stopped drowning. And the thing that stopped it was me. I wrote 1 line at the bottom of the legal pad. The late stop when I start. Then I did the other thing. The thing that hurt. I built a timeline of my own life. Age 22, October, account opened. Age 22, that fall, St. Rita's Nights, orientation. Age 22, that fall, a kitchen table, a pencil mark, a travel mug. Age 23, my father sold the boat. I remember that. He said he never used it. Age 23, my mother switched churches. Gordon Pike said 3 years. But Gordon Pike is going off memory, and I would put a year of slack on either side. Age 24, January, I started paying. Age 24, sometime that spring. A refinance. I knew there had been one, because my mother had mentioned it once, in passing, as good news, as, "Your father got the rate down." I stopped on that line and drew a box around it. Then I sat there, and I did the thing I had been avoiding for 2 hours, which was to ask myself the question a person is not supposed to have to ask. Who could open an account in my name? Not a stranger. A stranger does not have a property in Perrysburg to put behind it. A stranger cannot make 11 late payments and then somehow have them stop. It had to be somebody with the house. There were 2 people with the house. And I sat in that room at 4 in the morning and I ran it as coldly as I have ever run anything. And here is what my own chart said. My mother could not have done it. My mother cannot work the self-checkout at Kroger. My mother has never in her life filled out a form without saying, "Ray, come here," and holding it out at arm's length. I did not call anybody. I want to say that clearly, because it is the single most important decision I made in 6 months. I did not call my father and ask him what this was. Every instinct I had said pick up the phone. He would have answered. He would have said, "Oh, kid, that must be some mix-up. Let me look into it." And I would have believed him. I had believed him for 30 years. I had believed him 8 years ago at a kitchen table with a pen in my hand, and I would have believed him at 4 in the morning with 3 credit reports on a card table. Because that is what the wiring does. So I did not call. There was 1 line on my legal pad with nothing in it. Column 4. Verified. Every other row had a source. Bureau. Statement. Memory. That last column was empty all the way down, because everything I had was somebody telling me something. I needed a document with a signature on it, and I knew there was one, and I knew roughly where documents like that live. And it was not in my parents' house, and it was not in a bank. It was 22 miles south, across a river, in a different county. The Wood County Recorder's Office is in Bowling Green, in a county building with a metal detector at the front, and a directory in the lobby with white plastic letters. I got there at 9:15 on a Thursday in a fleece jacket and no makeup. Having slept about 2 hours, I want to tell you what that room is, because until I walked into it, I did not know it existed, and I think most people do not. Every mortgage in that county is in there. Every deed, every lien, every satisfaction, every release, every transfer going back to when the county was drained swamp and somebody sold it to somebody. It is not secret. It is not hard. There is no password. There is a counter, and a woman behind it, and a row of computer terminals with mouse pads that say the name of a title company on them. Anybody can walk in. A reporter, a neighbor, a stranger, a daughter. The woman at the counter was about 60, reading glasses on a beaded chain, and when I said I did not know how to look something up, she came out from behind the counter and sat down next to me at the terminal like it was the best thing that had happened to her that week. "You've got a name or an address?" "Both. Address is easier." She typed it. 406, Perrysburg. A list came up. 14 entries going back to 1991. When my parents bought the house. She scrolled with 2 fingers on the wheel. "There's your original," she said. 91. There's a refi in 99. There's another one in 2005. Scroll. Second mortgage in 2009. That's satisfied. See, that's the release right there. And then she stopped scrolling. "There's an open-ended mortgage," she said. "That's your equity line. October 8 years back." "Can I see it?" "You can see all of it. Honey, it's public. That's the whole point." She showed me how to open the image, and how to page through, and how to send it to the printer, and she told me it was 10 cents a page and the machine took quarters. And then she went back behind her counter and left me alone with it, which was a kindness I do not think she knew she was doing. It was 19 pages. I read the whole thing at a public terminal in Bowling Green, Ohio, on a Thursday morning, with a woman 2 counters down talking to somebody about a driveway easement. Page 1 had the property, the lender, the amount. 75,000. Pages 2 through 16 were the terms, which I read anyway, all of them, because I am the person who reads all of them, whatever my father said in that kitchen. Page 17 was the signature page. There were 2 signatures on it, Raymond J. Kovach, Danielle R. Kovach. And underneath mine, in the little block, the date, and next to it, a notary's stamp and a different signature, a woman's, a big looping one. I sat and looked at my own name. Here is what I want you to understand about looking at your own signature and knowing you did not write it. It is not shock. Shock is fast. This is slow, and it comes from a direction you are not covering, because it is good. It is a good forgery. It has my capital D, which has that flat top I have done since I was 11 because a teacher told me my D looked like a P. It has the loop I put on the second L. Whoever did it had seen my name written 100 times. In birthday cards, on report cards, on the back of school pictures. Of course they had. I sat there for about a minute before I saw it, and then I could not unsee it. The slant. I am left-handed. I write with my hand hooked over the top and my paper turned, and every letter I make leans back to the left, the way left-handed writing does. It has driven every teacher I ever had crazy. My 8th grade English teacher took points off for it. The signature on page 17 leaned forward. Every letter of it, clean and confident and tilted to the right, the way a right-handed man writes when he is sitting at his own kitchen table under the light with the rest of the house dark. 2 names on a page, same last name, same D and same loop, leaning opposite directions, I put 4 quarters in the machine and printed page 17 twice. Then I went back to the terminal and I looked at the date under the signature, and I sat very still. The 11th of October, a Tuesday. I did not remember the date. Nobody remembers a date from when they were 22. What I remembered was that it was a Tuesday, because Tuesday was the start of my stretch, and being late for a Tuesday handoff was the worst thing in the world. And my father knew what nights I worked because my mother had it on the calendar by the phone. I remembered a manila folder. I remembered reading glasses down on his nose. I remembered him saying 2 seconds. He had turned 1 page around for me. 1. And there were 2 names on the mortgage, and only one of them was mine to give. I sat in a county building and I finally understood that he had not needed my signature on the piece of paper he handed me. He had needed to know how fast I would sign. Then I paged to the last thing in the file. Page 19. An exhibit. A photocopy of the identification presented at signing. It was a bad scan. Gray and grainy, the way a photocopy of a laminated card comes out. An Ohio driver's license, Kovach, Danielle R., the address of a house I no longer lived in, height 5'6", which has not been true since I was 25 and started slouching. Eyes hazel, the organ donor heart in the corner, and a photograph of a girl with short hair. I had short hair for exactly 14 months, between 21 and 22, because I got tired of putting it up for shifts, and I went to a place on Front Street and told a woman to take it off. In that picture, I am not tired. That is the thing I keep coming back to. I have looked at that photocopy more times than is good for anybody. And what gets me every time is that the girl in it is not tired yet. Her face is still round in the cheek. She has that expression people have in license photos, half a second before ready, mouth doing something that is not a smile. She had 11 weeks of nights behind her. She thought that was hard. And down in the corner, the issue date. 4 years before it. 4 years before 8 years ago means that license was issued when I was 18 years old. And it means it expired when I was 22. And it means it was not the one in my wallet in October 8 years ago. Because in September of that year, at a Waffle House on Reynolds Road at 6:30 in the morning after a night shift, I lost my wallet. I sat in a booth and pulled everything out of my bag onto the table. I made the waitress check under the seat. I called my grandmother crying at 7 in the morning, and she says I was crying and I say I was tired. And we have had that argument for 8 years, and it has always been funny. I went to the deputy registrar on Alexis Road, and I waited 2 hours and 40 minutes, and they took the worst photograph ever taken of a human being. That is the story. That is a story I have told at parties. The old license was gone. It was gone in September. And in October it was in a bank, on a table, being photocopied as proof that I was in the room. I sat in a county building in Bowling Green, and I understood that it had never been lost. I had turned that booth upside down in front of a waitress. I had crawled around under a table. I had called my grandmother. And a week or 2 before that, that card had come out of my wallet in a house on a street where I grew up, and gone into somebody's pocket, and been kept in a drawer until it was needed. I want to describe what happened in my chest, because I have felt a lot of things in a lot of rooms, and I had not felt that one. It was not rage. Rage came later, in a garage. It was that the floor of my life moved about 4 inches to the left, because that is not a man panicking. A man panicking grabs the license out of the wallet on the day. This was 3 weeks early. This was a decision made on some ordinary Tuesday. And then a whole month of my father living in that house with that card in a drawer, saying good morning to me, asking if I had eaten. He watched me look for it. He was in the room. I know he was in the room, because my mother would have said, "Ray, help her look." because that is what my mother says. And he would have said, "Check the car, kid." I printed page 19. It cost me a dime. Then I walked out through the metal detector and across the parking lot and got in the car. I did not start it. I sat there for 40 minutes in a county parking lot in March with 19 pages in my lap. The heater was off. It got cold, and I did not notice for a while. And I thought about the Kroger lot. He taught me to drive there. Not driver's ed. That was a man named Mr. Shull who smelled like cough drops. My father taught me at night in the Kroger lot on Woodville Road after it closed, when it was just light poles and painted lines and a shopping cart corral to practice around. 15 years old, both hands on the wheel, him in the passenger seat with his coffee, saying, "Okay, now ease it. Ease it. You're not in a hurry." And the day of the road test, when I was so nervous I could not get the key in. He reached over and put his hand flat on my forearm and said, "Hey, breathe. You know how to do this." That man sat at a kitchen table and wrote my name in the wrong direction. Here is what came out of me, sitting in that car, not in sentences, in pieces, the way it actually happens. Every mile, every single one. 19 cities, room 311, bed 4, Walter, in Springfield, asking twice if I was his daughter, sleeping in a garage on level 4, a tooth for 3 years, a folding chair from Goodwill. All of it. For this, I put the pages in the passenger footwell so I would stop looking at them. Then I started the car. I did not drive north to Toledo, and I did not drive east to Perrysburg. I got on I-75 going north, and I got off at Anthony Wayne Trail, and I drove to Maumee, to a 1-story house with a carport and a concrete goose on the front step. The goose had a rain hat on. She had already changed it for spring. She opened the door before I knocked. She always does. She looked at my face, and she did not say, "There you are," this time. She stepped back and held the door. I put the stack of pages down on her kitchen table, on the vinyl cloth with the strawberries on it, and I could not say anything. I opened my mouth twice. My grandmother looked down at the top page for about 3 seconds. Then she said, "All right. Not, what is this?" "All right." She pulled out a chair and pointed at it, and I sat down in it like a kid. And then she went to the counter and turned the burner on under the kettle, which is what she does instead of asking questions. Then she went to the cupboard over the refrigerator, the high one, the one you need to get up on your toes for at 5'1". She came back with a cookie tin. It is dark blue with a Scottish Terrier on the lid, and I have known that tin my whole life. It has never had a cookie in it. She sat down and took the lid off, and there was a rubber band around a stack of papers, and she went through them with her thumb, unhurried. She took out one envelope and put it in front of me. It was addressed to me. At 406, Perrysburg. It had been opened along the top with a knife, not torn. "How long have you had this?" I said. 5 years. I put my hand flat on the table. 5 years. In August it'll be 6. The kettle started to make its noise. "Grandma." "I know." 5 years. She got up and turned the burner off. She did not make the tea. She stood at the stove with her back to me and her hands on the edge of the counter, exactly the way she had stood on Christmas Eve. And I understood that this was the position she takes when she is going to say a true thing. "I was over there the 4th of July, she said. "Your mother had a thing, and I went to put the ice in the freezer and the mail was on top of it and I picked it up to move it and I saw your name." "So you took it?" "I took it," she said, "and I sat in my car and I opened it and I read it, and I have had it in that tin ever since." She turned around. And I want you to hear me say that I know what that makes me. Then why? Because I couldn't prove it. She came back to the table and sat down and folded her hands. It's a piece of paper with a number on it and your name, she said. That's all it is. I'm 79 years old, Danielle. I've never been in a bank for anything but a Christmas club. I couldn't tell you what an equity line is if you put a gun on me. You could have shown it to me. And what would you have done? I opened my mouth. I want you to actually answer that, my grandmother said, and her voice was not unkind, and it did not give an inch. You're 25 years old. Your grandmother comes to you with a letter she stole out of your mother's kitchen and says, "Honey, I think your father is doing something to you." What do you do? I sat there. Because I knew. I knew exactly what I would have done. I would have taken it to my father, and he would have looked at it over his reading glasses and said, "Oh, kid, that's from the refinance. That's a mix-up. Let me call them Monday." And I would have gone home lighter, and she would have been the woman who went through the mail. He'd have had a reason, I said. He'd have had a reason, she agreed. And your mother would never have had me in that house again. And you would have been in it alone with the two of them and no grandmother, and I would have burned the one thing I had for nothing. She put 2 fingers on the envelope. So I kept it, and I waited for you to come to me with something in your hand, and then I heard it. I heard it from 11 weeks earlier, on Christmas Eve, over a sink full of dishes. Have you counted it? You asked me, I said. I asked you every year. She said it without any drama at all, which is what made it unbearable. Do you know what you pay a month, Danielle? What are they into you for now? Does your father ever show you anything? Have you counted it? She shook her head slowly. 11, 12 times. Different ways. I got smaller every year because you got further away. On Christmas Eve, I thought you meant the chairs. I know you did. I told you about the name cards. I know. My grandmother said, I stood there and I listened to you tell me about 12 name cards, and I thought, well, Ruthie, not this year either. I put my face in my hands. And my grandmother said one more thing, and she said it looking at the wall over my shoulder. And it is the only time in my life I have heard her talk about my mother that way. I made her, she said. Diane, I raised that girl to think that if the house looks right, it is right. I taught her that. I was 32, and I had nothing, and I thought if the front of it looked all right, nobody would come in. She pressed her lips together. She learned it. She learned it better than I ever did. The kettle ticked as it cooled. What do you want to do? She said. There's something else I need first, I said. The rest of my mail. I went on a Wednesday at 11 in the morning, because on Wednesdays my mother is at the church until 1 and my father takes his truck to the diner on Oregon Road. I still had a key. Nobody had thought about that either. The house smelled like it always smells. Coffee that has been on the warmer too long and the vanilla plug and thing she puts in the outlet by the stairs. She was home. She was sitting at the dining room table with a spiral notebook, and she looked up when the kitchen door opened and her whole body went stiff. They canceled the ladies' thing, she said. Okay, Danielle, if you're here to, I want my mail. She blinked. Whatever she had braced for, it was not that. Your what? My mail. Everything that's come here with my name on it. I gave you that. At Christmas. I gave you the whole stack. That was 40 envelopes, I said. I've had this address for 8 years. Well, I throw the junk out. How do you know it's junk? She stood up. She put both hands on the back of the dining chair. Because it is junk. Danielle, It's insurance offers, and it's the car warranty people, and it's... Do you open it? No. Then how do you know? Because I have been getting the mail in this house for 35 years, she said. And I know what junk looks like. I did not argue with her. I walked past her, through the dining room, into the little front hall, to the built-in cabinet next to the door. There is a cabinet in that house next to the front door with 3 drawers in it. The top one has batteries and dead pens and about 9 keys nobody can identify. I pulled out the bottom one. Every family has this drawer. It was full to the top. Rubber bands, whole bricks of envelopes with brittle rubber bands around them. 4 and 5 inches thick. Shoved in flat and then shoved in sideways when flat stopped working. Church bulletins, a phone book, 2 of those plastic address label sheets from the Veterans Organization, and envelopes with my name on them. I sat down on the floor of my parents' front hall with my legs out in front of me, and I started going through it. And my mother stood in the doorway of the dining room and watched me do it and did not say one word. They were not junk. Some of them were junk. A lot of them were junk. But in among the junk, going back and back and back, in the same envelope with the same window and the same little green shield in the corner, were statements. Danielle R. Kovach, 406. Some had been opened along the top with a knife. Most had not. I put them in piles by year, right there on the floor. 8 piles. I did not count them all that day. I counted them later, at my card table, and there were 63. I want you to look at one of these, I said. I'm not going to. Mom, I held one up without turning around. Look at it. She came about 4 steps into the hall and stopped. Read the name. Danielle, I know what my own daughter's... Read the name. And my mother stood in her front hall and looked at an envelope in my hand and did not read the name, and her face did something I had never seen it do, which was nothing at all. Here is how it went after that. It went in 3 layers, and each one was thinner than the one before it. The first layer was I never saw those. That lasted about 90 seconds, until I held up one with a knife slit along the top edge. The second layer was your father handles the mail. He gets home at 4:30. He handles the mail. Danielle. You just told me you have been getting the mail in this house for 35 years. And she said, that's different. And I watched her hear it. The third layer took longer to get to, and it is the one I still think about, because the third layer was not a lie. She sat down on the second step of the stairs. My mother, 58 years old, in the good slacks, sat down on a stair. He was going to put it back, she said. I stopped sorting. What? He told me, years ago. She was looking at the carpet. He said there was a thing he'd had to do to keep the house, and that it was temporary, and that he was going to put it back. And I said, Ray, is it going to touch her? And he said, no. She lifted her chin a little. He said no. There are 63 of these. He said it was temporary. How long is temporary? Mom. She did not answer that. You asked him if it was going to touch me, I said. That means you knew there was a thing that could... I didn't know what it was. You knew enough to ask. And my mother looked up at me from the second step and said the truest sentence I have ever heard her say. And she did not know she was saying it. I didn't want to know what it was. I sat on that floor in a pile of my own mail. The clock in the kitchen was doing its thing. Where's Dad? I said. And she said, he's in the garage. And she said it in a voice that told me she had been waiting 8 years for somebody to ask her that question in that tone. I did not go straight out there. I carried the piles to my car in 4 trips and put them in the trunk. And then I sat in the driver's seat in my parents' driveway with the 63 statements behind me and the 19 pages in the footwell. And I did the last piece of arithmetic. I had everything now. I had 8 years of statements with dates and balances on them. I had a mortgage recorded in a county office. I had my own bank records going back 6 years. What I did not have yet was the connection between the thing my father did when I was 22 and the thing I had been doing every 15th of the month since I was 24. I found it in about 4 minutes. The statements from the equity line stop, not the account. The account stayed open, and it still had a balance, and the balance still had interest running on it. But the statements from that lender stop in the spring of the year I turned 24, and after that the mail with my name on it is from somewhere else, a different green shield, a different address. The refinance. Your father got the rate down. My mother had said it in passing, like it was weather. I understood the shape in 4 minutes. It took 2 more weeks and a person who does this for a living to understand the rest. Here is the shape. In the spring of the year I turned 24. The mortgage on that house was redone. And when it was redone, the $61,000 sitting on that equity line, the one with 11 late payments on it and my name in the wrong slant, did not stay where it was. It got folded in. It went into the new first mortgage, the one that generated one clean payment every month on the 15th, $2,340. And in January of the following year, his daughter started paying it. I sat in that driveway. The lates on the equity line stop when I start. I had written that on a legal pad at 4 in the morning, and I had not understood it. It was not that my money kept my parents afloat and the account happened to recover. It was that the account was inside the payment. The payment was the account. From January of that year forward, every 15th, part of $2,340 went to service a debt that a man had taken out in his daughter's name 8 years earlier. And the daughter making the payment was the daughter. I had not been saving my parents' house. I had been quietly, faithfully, for 72 consecutive months, cleaning up after my father, $194,480, and I had thought I was being generous, and what I had actually been doing was covering a debt that was already legally mine because he had made it mine without telling me. Plus 61,000 still open, still accruing, still in my name, $255,480. I said that number out loud in the car. Then the rest of it came, all at once, like a light going on in a room you have been feeling your way around for 3 months. Kendall, if she stops, it all comes up. Of course it did. If I stopped paying, that mortgage went late. If that mortgage went late, somebody eventually looks at the file, and in that file, folded into a refinance, is a $61,000 line that a 22-year-old night shift nurse supposedly signed for with a driver's license she had reported lost 3 weeks earlier. I told Mom not to put the card out. Because Bev has a mouth on her, and if I sat down at that table somebody would ask me something, and I would start doing arithmetic in front of the whole family. They did not leave me off that table because they were embarrassed by me. They left me off it because I was the only person in that family who counts things. And Trevor, paragraph 4. Trevor was not trying to squeeze money out of me. Trevor works in a bank. Trevor had looked at that file at some point and seen exactly what I was looking at now. And Trevor's problem was that a property he and my sister wanted to borrow against had a landmine buried in the paperwork. And the fastest way to keep the landmine buried was to make sure the payments never ever stopped. That is what the ham was for. And the good pen, and the card with my name in green ink, and the picture off the mantel, and the coffee in the parking garage at 7:15 in the morning, and hope tonight wasn't bad. The kindest 3 weeks of my adult life were a maintenance schedule. And then I thought about the man in April, the one Gordon Pike watched walk up to that door on a Thursday, tape a sheet of paper at eye level on the storm door, and leave. And my father's truck coming in fast, and my father going up those steps quicker than he moves, and taking it down, and folding it, and putting it in his coat, and then sitting in the truck. He did not go inside. He sat in the truck in his own driveway holding a piece of paper about his daughter. And then at some point he got out and came in the house and hung his coat up and asked somebody what was for dinner. I turned my head and looked at the garage. The side door was open about a foot. The light was on in there. It was 11:40 in the morning on a Wednesday in the middle of March. He was putting up a shelf. That is what he was doing. A man of 61 in a garage in the middle of a Wednesday, putting a bracket on a wall over a workbench that already had 2 shelves on it with nothing on either one. He had the level out. He was being careful about it. He heard the door and turned around with the pencil still behind his ear. "Hey, kid, I did not say anything." I walked over to the workbench and I put 19 pages down on it, face up, page 17 on top. And here is the thing that told me everything before he opened his mouth. He did not pick it up. He did not lean over it. He did not squint. He did not say, "What's this?" He did not go get his reading glasses. And his reading glasses were right there, 6 inches away, on the bench, next to a coffee can of screws. He looked at it for about 2 seconds, and his shoulders came down. He knew what it was from across a garage. He had been waiting for it for 8 years. "Oh," he said. "Yeah. Danny." "In the house," I said. "Mom's in the house." The 3 of us were at the kitchen table 9 minutes later. I want to tell you what that room was like, because I had imagined this in about 40 different ways over 3 days, and I had imagined shouting, and I had imagined a crowd, and I had imagined it in a lawyer's office like it was 3 people at a kitchen table on a Wednesday at noon, with the light coming in over the sink, and a spiral notebook still open at the other end where my mother had left it. Nobody raised their voice. Not once. Not one time in that entire conversation. He apologized before I asked a single question. That is the thing I did not expect. He started before I did. He put both hands on the table and he said, "I want to say I'm sorry. I have wanted to say it for 8 years. And I'm not going to make excuses. I did it. And I'm sorry, and there's nothing." "Stop." He stopped. "You don't get to do that yet," I said. My mother made a small sound. "You want to say sorry so I don't ask you the questions. I've watched you do that my whole life and I never once knew that's what it was." I put my hand flat on the pages. "Tell me what happened. Start at the plant." He looked at his hands, and then he told me, and it took about 20 minutes, and it was the longest I have ever heard my father talk. 52 years old. 29 years at that plant. The last 11 as a shift supervisor. And then a Tuesday morning in a conference room with a woman from corporate who had flown in, and 11 of them in there. And a folder each. 6 months of applying. He did not tell us that part. We thought he was consulting. There was no consulting. Your mother had the church, and Kendall was in her last year, and I had a house payment and a truck payment, and I was 52 years old, and every place I went, the kid interviewing me was 30. He said the equity line was supposed to be 6 months. That's what I told myself. 6 months. I get something. I pay it back. Nobody ever knows there was a gap. Then why is my name on it? He did not answer. Dad, why is my name on it? Because they wouldn't give it to me, he said. And there it was. I had no income. I'd already pulled once against the house in '09. They looked at me and they said no, he was not looking at me. And you had a job. I was just 22. You had a job at a hospital. I was 3 months in. I made $19 an hour. You had a job at a hospital, he said again, and you had never missed anything in your life, and your credit was clean, and it was going to be 6 months. My mother said, "Ray." "Sit down, Diane." She was not standing up. He said it anyway. "How did you get the license?" I said. And that was the question. That was the one he could not paint. "Out of your wallet." "When?" "I don't remember." "Yes, you do. A couple weeks before," he said. 3 weeks. "Okay." I turned a booth upside down at a Waffle House looking for that. I called Grandma crying. My voice did not go up. "I have thought about that a lot, too." You were in this house when I couldn't find it." "I know." "Did you tell me to check the car?" He put his face in his hand. "Dad, did you tell me to check the car?" Yes, we sat there. And then he lifted his head and he said the sentence he had been building the whole 20 minutes toward, the one he had probably said to himself in the truck 1,000 times. And he said it the way a man says something he genuinely believes. I was always going to put it back. I looked at my father. 8 years, 63 statements in a drawer, 72 payments, a tooth I carried for 3 years, 19 cities, a folding chair from Goodwill. "You didn't take out a loan," I said. "You took out a daughter. Nobody said anything. The clock did its thing." "What are you going to do?" he said. And I said, "I don't know," and that was the truth, and here is the part people always get wrong when I tell this. So I am going to be slow about it. I did not call anybody's employer. I did not call a newspaper. I did not write a letter. I did not post anything, anywhere, ever. What I did was this. There was an account on my credit reports that was not mine. It was open. It was accruing. And until it came off, I could not buy a house, and it would keep sitting there for the rest of my life quietly deciding things about me. So I disputed it. That is all. You write to the 3 bureaus and you say this account is not mine, and here is why, and here is what I have. And the bureaus, being companies and not people, do what companies do. They send the dispute to the lender, and the lender has to go pull the file. And the file goes to a department that exists specifically to look at files like that. I did not aim any of it. I aimed at exactly one thing, which was my own name, and everything else that happened was the building falling down on its own because of where the load was. Trevor called me on a Tuesday, 19 days later. He had never called me before. Not once in 5 years of being married to my sister. Trevor texts, "Danielle." His voice was up in his throat. "What did you do?" "I'm at work. There's a review. Do you understand what I'm there is an internal review? And it's got my name on the origination because that file came through my branch in the refi. That was my branch. And now there's people from Columbus asking me why. Trevor, why there's a lien on a 22-year-old with no income and a license that got reissued. Trevor, stop." He stopped. "Did you know I said silence on the line? I was standing in a stairwell at 9 at night with a badge on. Did you know when you slid that paper across the table on Valentine's Day? That's not Danielle, that's not what that was. Did you know?" "I knew there was an exposure," he said. "An exposure." "Say what it was." "Danielle, you looked at a file and you saw my name on something I never signed," I said. "And you sat at a table with my mother's ham on it and you tried to get me to sign a new one. I was trying to fix it. You were trying to bury it. You have no idea what you've done to this family. And that is the sentence. That is the one they all get to eventually. Every single one of them. And I have thought about it ever since. I disputed a debt that isn't mine, I said. That's the entire thing I did. If that's enough to bring your whole life down, then your whole life was standing on it. He hung up. Kendall called twice that week. I did not pick up. She left one voicemail that was 11 seconds long and consisted of her saying my name and then breathing and then saying, okay, and hanging up. She did not call again for 8 months. My grandmother told me about the church. It was the first Sunday in April. My mother had gone back to Louisiana Avenue that spring, after 3 years at the big one on Route 25, and Ruth Vasco had gone with her, because that is her church and has been since 1953. There is a hall in the back where they do coffee after, and a woman named Colleen came over. The one who had been in that living room in February with a drink in her hand. My grandmother told it to me flat, on the phone, in about 6 sentences, and did not embellish any of it. Colleen asked her how you were. That's it. She said, how's Danielle? We never see her. A pause. And then she said, I don't think she was on the Christmas card, was she? I went to put it up on the icebox and I thought, now who am I missing? What did Mom say? She said you were working. And then Colleen said, My grandmother said, and went and got a cookie. I sat with the phone against my ear. That's all it takes, Ruth said. Everything your mother built for 35 years, and it comes apart with, I did not feel good. I want to put that down honestly, because I know what you are supposed to feel there. I had imagined a version of this. Everyone does. Some room where they finally see it. I got the room. It happened. And what I felt, sitting on the edge of a mattress on the floor with the phone in my hand, was tired. Grandma. I don't like it. No, she said. I didn't think you would. That's how I know you're all right. Priya called on the 14th of April. I've got some paperwork back from the lender, she said. And I have to ask you something, and I want you to hear the whole question before you answer. Okay. To get this off you, they're going to need a report. Not a dispute. A report. I knew what she meant. An affidavit, she said. Sworn. Naming who did it. And a police report to go with it. I had been avoiding that for 3 weeks. I had been so good at avoiding it that I had almost convinced myself the dispute alone would do it. There's no other way, she said. I'm sorry. I've looked. There have been 3 tables in this story. The first seats 12 and has a leaf that only goes out the one length. The second has a vinyl cloth with strawberries on it and a cookie tin that has never had a cookie in it. The third was in a municipal building on the 22nd of May. Gray laminate with a burn ring on it, and one leg shorter than the other 3. The woman across from me was maybe 45, extremely kind and completely unmoved, which I understand now is the only way you can do that job. She put the form down and went through it section by section with the tip of her pen. Section 1, who I am. Section 2, the account. Section 3, the dates. Section 4, the documents attached. And I had a folder 2 inches thick. Section 5 was the name. You'll want to take your time with that one, she said, and got up and went and stood by the window with her back to me, which I have never forgotten. I picked up the pen. I want to tell you what actually goes through your head. Because it is not what you would think. It is not a montage. It is stupid, specific things, in no order. The Kroger lot after close. Light poles and a cart corral. Ease it. You're not in a hurry. A hand flat on my forearm the morning of the road test. Breathe. You know how to do this. Him standing in snow in his slippers with his arms crossed because he did not want the last thing to be his daughter driving off. You doing okay out there, kid? A garage, a shelf that did not need to go up, reading glasses 6 inches away that he did not reach for. I put the pen down. He had called me the night before. I picked up, which surprised both of us. I was sitting on my mattress with the light off. He did not ask me not to do it. That is the whole reason I am able to talk about my father at all. In 8 years, that phone call is the one thing. He said, "Danny," and I said, "Yeah," and there was a long stretch of nothing, and then he said, "Whatever you've got to do tomorrow, you go ahead and do it." "Okay, it's yours." His voice went, "It's your name." It was always your name and I took it. "And you go get it back." "Okay, Dad." That's all I called for. And he hung up before either of us could ruin it. I picked the pen back up in that gray room and I wrote Raymond J. Kovach in section 5, and I wrote it slowly, and I read every line of that form before I signed the bottom of it. All 4 pages, including the small print, because I am the person who reads all of it. It took me 11 minutes. The woman came back from the window when she heard the pen stop. The house went on the market the 9th of July. I found out from a listing alert because Kendall had set one up for me in February when we were house hunting and I had never turned it off. That is how it came to me. A push notification on a Tuesday morning with a photograph of my parents' front porch on it. 90-day marketing period. They took $285. After the first mortgage and after the equity line, there was not a lot, enough for a security deposit and a truck rental. They moved to a rental in Northwood, a 2-bedroom, in August. My grandmother told me it has a fenced yard and my mother has put a lot into the yard. Kendall and Trevor separated in October. That is all I know, and it is all I want to know. Nobody bailed them out. Nobody came. There was no uncle with money, no last-minute buyer, no one who stepped in. I have been asked more than once whether I considered it, and the honest answer is that, for about a week in June, I considered it constantly, and then I stopped. Aunt Bev called me in July. I picked up because I thought it was about my grandmother. She said, and I am quoting this exactly because I have never forgotten a word of it. "I hope you're proud of yourself. That's your father, 61 years old and out of his house, over money. And you did that. Your mother can't show her face. I don't know what happened to you out there, but you came back somebody else." I let her finish. Here is what I said. I said, "Okay, Bev." And then I said goodbye and I hung up, and I put the phone on the counter, and I stood in my kitchen. I did not defend myself. Not one sentence, not the license, not the 63 envelopes, not the 72 payments, not the tooth. Because I finally understood something that took me 30 years and $255,480 to learn. There was no version of this where I got my name back and stayed the good one. That was never on the table. That was never one of the options. The only choice I ever actually had was which one I was willing to lose, and I had spent 6 years choosing wrong, and in May I chose the other way. You will get called selfish. I want whoever needs to hear this to hear it plainly. If you ever stop, they will call you selfish. And they will call you cold. And somebody's aunt will call you on a Tuesday. That is not a sign you did it wrong. That is the bill. You pay it once. The account came off my credit reports on the 19th of September. I resubmitted the application on the 22nd. I closed on the house on 6th Street on the 4th of December. $86,000. The estate had been carrying it for a year by then, and they were done. The inspector found knob and tube in the back half, and a garage that he described, in writing, as being held up by the vines, and I bought it anyway. 960 square feet. I sat on the floor of the empty living room that first night with a sleeping bag and a box of crackers and no furniture at all, and I listened to it. New house sounds, the furnace kicking, a branch on the gutter. The next morning I went out to the back door and looked at the hook with the metal loop on it and the worn oval in the paint around it where somebody's hand had gone 1,000 times, and I left it exactly where it was. 3 weeks later, it was Christmas Eve. We had it at my grandmother's because her oven is better and because at 79 she is entitled to not go anywhere. 9 of us. My grandmother, me, Tasha, and her husband Wendell, who turns out to be the funniest person any of us have ever met and who did not say more than 11 words for the first hour. 2 nurses off our unit, Marguerite and Sam, both of whom had nowhere and both of whom had said no twice before saying yes. 2 of my grandmother's friends from Louisiana Avenue, Alberta and Faye, who are 81 and 84 and who fought about a pie in the kitchen for 20 minutes, and Gordon Pike, who I called on the 15th and who said, "Oh no, I couldn't," and then said, "What can I bring?" We did not have 9 chairs. We had 4 kitchen chairs. 2 folding chairs Alberta made her nephew drop off from the church basement, a stool, a piano bench with nobody's piano, and a wooden chair from my grandmother's bedroom that has a needlepoint seat and is not supposed to be sat on. The table did not seat 9, so we put the card table on the end of it and covered both with 2 different tablecloths, and nobody said anything about it. Wendell carved. Alberta made her pie, and Faye made hers, and both were on the counter and both got eaten, and neither woman would look at the other one's tin. At some point, Marguerite asked how everybody knew each other, which is a question that takes some answering in a room like that, and Gordon said, "I'm the neighbor," and did not elaborate, and it was the right answer. My grandmother had put out little cards. She had done it herself in ballpoint on index cards cut in half, crooked, and she had spelled Marguerite wrong. Mine said, Danny. At about 8:15, there was a knock. The whole room went quiet the way a room does. I went to the door. Kendall was standing on the step in a coat I did not recognize, alone, with her hands in her pockets and no bag and no car in the driveway that I could see, which meant she had parked down the block, which meant she had sat in it for a while first. She had cut her hair off. It was short. It looked like mine when I was 22. "Hi," she said. "Hi." Neither of us said anything for a second. Behind me, Alberta was telling somebody they were wrong about something. I want to tell you what she did not do, because it matters. She did not apologize. She did not cry. She did not say, "Can we talk?" And she did not say, "I've been thinking about everything." And she did not ask me for one single thing. She stood on my grandmother's front step in the cold and said, "Was there really no club I did not understand at first?" "In the kitchen," she said. "With Dad, that fall, I said it at lunch and you said there was no club and I thought you were being—" She stopped. She looked at the concrete goose, which had a Santa hat on. "I've been thinking about it for about 6 months, and I want to know what it actually was. From you, not from Mom. That is what she came for, not to be forgiven, not to be let in." She drove across town on Christmas Eve and parked down the block and sat in a cold car to ask her sister for the real version of a thing she had gotten wrong. That is not nothing. I am not going to tell you it is everything, because it is not. But it is not nothing. "It was one night," I said. October 11th. He had me sign one page and told me it was car insurance. She nodded. She kept nodding. "Small," at the ground. "Okay," she said. Then she said, "Okay," again, and did not move. Behind me, somebody laughed at something Wendell said. I looked at my sister on the step and I thought about the 700 things I could say, and about the 40 seconds of audio that is still on a drive in a shoebox in my closet, and that I have still never played for anybody. And then I did the only thing I have ever actually wanted to do. I turned around and I went into my grandmother's bedroom, and I got the chair with the needlepoint seat that is not supposed to be sat on, and I carried it out and I put it at the end of the card table, at the corner, where the two tablecloths meet. "You'll have to squeeze." I said, "That is not forgiveness. I want to be clear, I have not forgiven my father, and I do not know if I will. And my mother and I speak twice a year, at Easter and on her birthday. And it is short and it is polite. It is not forgiveness. It is that the chair was mine to move. That is the whole thing. That is what 6 years and $255,480 bought me, and I would not sell it back. For 30 years I stood in other people's kitchens and waited to find out whether there was room for me, and the answer was decided by somebody else, in November, 6 weeks early, at a photography studio in Sylvania. There was always a chair. There is always a chair. Every house on earth has one more chair in the basement. What there was never going to be, in that house, was somebody willing to go down and get it. So I stopped waiting to be seated. I bought a table. If any of this landed on you, do me a favor and hit the like button and subscribe if you are not already, because it genuinely helps. And then tell me down in the comments, have you ever had to stop paying for someone in your family? And what did they call you after you did? I read those. All of them. There are more of us in there than you would think. And if you want another one right now, there is a story waiting for you in the box on the left.